A simple girl walked into the wrong operating room. A millionaire doctor saw her and knew his life would never be the same. Hello, viewer. Thanks for joining us. Leave a like and share your thoughts in the comments, along with the city you're watching from. Now let's continue with the story. Olivia Bailey awoke to the familiar hum of her aging air conditioner rattling in the window. She rubbed her eyes and took a moment to recognize her cramped studio apartment, lit only by the faint glow of dawn. Around her were reminders of yesterday's struggles: unopened mail, a half-eaten slice of pizza, and her worn-out shoes kicked under the small table. This was her reality, a constant fight to move forward despite the weight of the past pulling her back. Her phone buzzed with its usual morning alarm, sounding more impatient than ever. She sighed and turned it off. Today, she had to head to the hospital for a volunteer orientation. She needed the hours to boost her credentials if she ever hoped to get a stable position as a medical receptionist. Another rung on a ladder that seemed never-ending. The city traffic greeted Olivia as she squeezed onto a crowded bus. She tried to ignore the stale smell of perspiration and coffee, focusing instead on the voices in her head, her late mother's echoing encouragement. Keep pushing, live. Dreams don't knock twice. But living up to a memory sometimes felt heavier than she could handle. By the time she arrived at St. Jerome's Hospital, her nerves were in overdrive. The tall glass doors reflected a woman who looked just as anxious as she felt. The reflection showed the lines of worry on her face, strands of dark hair escaping her loose ponytail, and eyes that carried too many disappointments. She straightened her scrubs with trembling hands and walked inside. Up on the 10th floor, she found the small conference room for new volunteers. She expected to see a large group. Instead, only a few individuals dotted the seats, flipping through informational packets. A middle-aged man in a crisp button-down shirt approached, smiling politely. "Hi," he greeted. "I'm Stephen. You must be Olivia." She nodded. "That's right. Nice to meet you, Stephen." He offered her a seat. "We're still waiting on a couple more folks. Coffee's in the corner. Feel free to grab a cup." Olivia forced a small smile and made her way to the styrofoam cups. She hoped the caffeine might settle the flutter in her stomach. Around her, a couple of older volunteers exchanged small talk, but she didn't catch their names. She felt too restless to chat. Meanwhile, on the opposite side of the hospital, Dr. Dylan Avery wrapped up his early morning rounds. Tall and poised, with dark, expertly styled hair, Dylan exuded a cool confidence that many mistook for arrogance. Beneath that professional exterior, however, lived a longing, an ache for something genuine, untainted by the Avery family name or the fortune that came with it. He nodded to a nurse as he signed off on patient charts. "We should monitor Ms. King's vitals more frequently," he said in a low, even tone. Her post-op blood pressure was borderline. "Yes, Dr. Avery," the nurse replied, noticing the tired set of his jaw. "Will do." Dylan forced a polite smile and handed back the clipboard. The entire hospital looked up to him for his skill and philanthropic donations, but none of that had filled the emptiness he felt whenever he walked into his penthouse, alone, except for passing staff who treated him more like a business transaction than a man. He shook off that familiar heaviness and headed toward the surgical wing. There was always more to do, more patients to see. He supposed that staying busy was better than confronting the hollowness he couldn't seem to escape. Back in the conference room, Stephen cleared his throat and started the volunteer briefing. "Welcome to St. Jerome's. Our mission is not just about saving lives, but offering compassion to those who need it most." He then launched into instructions about how to assist families, help with administrative tasks, and escort patients when necessary. Olivia listened, absorbing each word. She envisioned herself stepping onto a path that might finally lead to stability. a chance to prove she wasn't as hopeless as her bank account suggested. In the midst of Stephen's talk, she recalled how her mother had spent her last days in a crowded hospital room, never getting the attention she truly deserved. It was that memory, that sense of wanting to give comfort, that pushed Olivia to be here now. 40 minutes later, Stephen concluded, "If anyone has questions, please see me afterward. Otherwise, you can pick up your assigned tasks from the board outside. Good luck, everyone." Olivia followed the small group out. She found her name on a schedule indicating she'd be helping with administrative tasks for the day. Swallowing her nerves, she clutched the paper and scanned the corridors, trying to match the directions she'd memorized. The hum of fluorescent lights and the pungent scent of antiseptic guided her deeper into the labyrinth of hallways. She told herself this was it, her chance to prove she belonged in a place like this, a place where she could care for others, even if only by providing a calm smile at the reception desk or guiding them to the correct waiting area. Something inside her whispered that she was meant for more, but for now, she would start right here. Unbeknownst to Olivia, destiny lurked just beyond the next set of double doors. A single wrong turn, a fleeting moment of confusion, and a world she never thought she'd enter would open wide, ushering her straight into the orbit of the one man who could change everything. Olivia clung to the small slip of paper that listed her assigned tasks. She glanced at the sign on the hallway wall. Medical supplies storage, radiology, surgery wing. The volunteer coordinator had mentioned she might need to drop off some patient files in one of the administrative offices near the surgery wing. Yet, as she walked, the corridor seemed endless. Lined with identical white doors, labeled with abbreviations she could barely interpret. She paused near a side door, uncertain if it led to the right area. "I should ask someone," she whispered to herself. However, the hallway appeared empty, the distant squeak of a rolling gurney the only sound. Summoning a hint of courage, she nudged the handle. The door swung inward, revealing a small, brightly lit antechamber. Beyond that, she saw another set of double doors with a sign that read, "Operating Room 3, Authorized Personnel Only." Confusion set in. This didn't look like the administrative office. Before she could back out, a voice startled her. "Nurse, is that you?" "We're about to begin the prep." Panicked, Olivia glanced around, searching for an excuse, but curiosity or sheer nervousness stilled her feet. She took a half step forward, intending to clarify the mistake. A glimmer of movement caught her eye. Men and women in surgical scrubs gathered around a table, light reflected off sterile metal trays. An IV bag dripped steadily. The antiseptic smell was stronger here, and it hit her with the force of memory, her mother's time in a similar room. She stammered, I'm sorry, I think I—" A masked figure turned, confusion evident even through the surgical cap and mask. Then the figure's voice cut through the tension. "Ma'am, you can't be in here." She stepped backward, mortified. "I didn't realize—" Her face burned with embarrassment. Just as she turned to go, another presence entered from a side hallway, tall, broad-shouldered, and clad in scrubs of deep blue. Dr. Dylan Avery stepped in, scanning the scene. His intense gaze, a stormy grey, landed on Olivia, a sudden spark of curiosity lighting his features. He addressed the masked nurse. "Who is she? Is something wrong?" A hush fell over the small group. Olivia's heart pounded so loudly she wondered if they all could hear it. She managed to sputter, "I'm not supposed to be here. I just got lost." Dylan's expression softened. He noticed how her eyes flickered with both fear and a certain quiet determination. "This is a restricted area," he said gently. "Are you a new hire?" She clutched the volunteer badge hanging from her neck. I'm volunteering," she managed. I was looking for the administrative offices to deliver some files and... He removed his mask for a moment, revealing a concerned half smile. You walked straight into an operating room by accident. Olivia felt her cheeks flame. I'll leave right now. I'm so sorry. The nurse piped up. We're about to start. Dr. Avery, we need you scrubbed in. Dylan nodded, then turned to Olivia. You should go before someone else sees you and has a fit. His voice was calm, though a faint amusement danced in his eyes. But please, be careful in these halls. It can get confusing. She nodded hastily. Thank you. I will. With that, she fled, her breath catching in her throat. Outside in the corridor, she leaned against the wall, pressing a hand to her chest. What a disaster, she thought. She'd intruded on a surgical team, made a fool of herself in front of a doctor who looked like he stepped out of a glossy magazine. She already felt small in this imposing hospital, and now she'd given them reason to doubt her competence. Yet, amid her embarrassment, she couldn't shake the image of Dr. Avery's eyes, cool, assessing, but not unkind. There was an unmistakable curiosity in his gaze, as if he'd seen something in her that he couldn't quite place. Down in the OR, Dylan tried to focus on the surgery at hand, but his mind kept returning to the startled woman who'd stumbled in. He'd seen confusion in her face, but also a spark of something else, a quiet resolve, maybe. And her voice. The mixture of politeness and genuine apology tugged at something in him he hadn't felt in a long time. He brushed off the distraction. He had an operation to perform, and daydreaming about a random volunteer was hardly professional. Nevertheless, later that afternoon, as he walked toward his office, Dylan found himself scanning the hallways. He spotted volunteer badges on a couple of individuals, but not on the woman he'd encountered. Why am I even looking for her? He questioned silently, realizing that a single fleeting moment shouldn't captivate him like this. Meanwhile, Olivia hovered by the administrative desk, collecting herself. A friendly receptionist noticed her rattled state. Are you okay, hun? You look like you just saw a ghost. Olivia forced a laugh. More like I accidentally joined a surgery. Trust me, not my proudest moment. The receptionist grinned sympathetically. Yeah, this place can be a maze. Don't beat yourself up. Nodding, Olivia took a deep breath and refocused on her tasks. She'd come here to help, to move forward with her life. One slip-up wouldn't define her. Still, the memory of Dr. Avery's piercing gaze lingered, stirring a feeling she couldn't name, part humiliation, part intrigue. By late afternoon, Olivia's volunteer shift ended, leaving her with a swirl of thoughts. She replayed the moment she'd barged into the operating room. She recalled the intensity in Dr. Avery's eyes, a slight frown that spoke of concern rather than anger. Standing on the sidewalk outside St. Jerome's, she watched the sun dip below the horizon. Her heart pounded with a strange mix of regret and anticipation. She had no idea that, inside the hospital, Dylan stared out his office window, his mind inexplicably fixated on the woman who vanished before he could even ask her name. Olivia spent the bus ride home replaying every detail of her day, as if searching for a clue that would help her understand her own swirling emotions. She told herself she was simply embarrassed for having stumbled into an operating room. Yet in the quiet corners of her mind, she knew there was more to it than that. Those grey eyes, calm under the fluorescent lights, seemed to see right through her. After stepping off the bus, she walked 3 blocks to her worn brick apartment building. The elevator was broken again, another inconvenience in a long list, so she trudged up 4 flights of stairs. Inside her apartment, the flickering light of an old lamp revealed the space's peeling wallpaper. She kicked off her shoes and collapsed on the second-hand couch. She opened her phone to check for messages. A single voicemail from her sister, Leah, played through the speaker. "Liv, you good? You missed Sunday brunch again. Call me, okay? Olivia sighed, feeling the subtle pang of guilt. She and Leah once shared everything, but time and responsibilities had wedged a distance between them. Instead of returning the call right away, she stared at the dark screen. Her thoughts still circled around a pair of grey eyes that belonged to a man she'd only met for 5 seconds. The next morning found her back at St. Jerome's. Determined to avoid any further misadventures, she arrived early, wearing more comfortable shoes and a renewed sense of caution. The day's assignment was to assist in reception on the 2nd floor, which was close enough to the surgery wing to send a wave of anxiety rippling through her. But she steeled herself, determined to prove she wasn't incompetent. Around 9, she stationed herself behind the reception desk, taking down patient information and directing visitors. An older woman approached, trembling slightly. Olivia's gentle smile broke through the woman's anxious exterior. "It's my husband," the visitor said, voice quaking. "He's just out of surgery, and they told me he's in recovery. But I can't find where that is." Olivia rose from her chair, moving around the desk. "Don't worry, ma'am. I'll walk you there myself." Gratitude lit the older woman's eyes. "Thank you, dear." As they walked, Olivia found comfort in helping someone, recalling how alone she'd felt when her mother was in the hospital years ago. The simple act of guiding a worried relative soothed her insecurities, if only for a moment. They reached the recovery room, and Olivia flagged down a nurse to ensure the woman could see her husband. Just as Olivia turned to leave, a familiar voice caught her off guard. "Volunteering again." Dr. Dylan Avery stood a few paces away, arms folded over his chest, an unreadable expression on his face. He wore his usual scrubs, the ID badge clipped to his pocket, and that same poised stance that hinted at controlled intensity. Olivia felt a jolt of nerves. She forced a polite nod. "Yes. They posted me on the 2nd floor today." He nodded. "I see you're putting that volunteer badge to good use." A small silence stretched between them. She tried to read his demeanor, looking for any trace of judgment about yesterday's mishap, but found none. Instead, she noticed a flicker of curiosity in his gaze. Hesitating, she finally said, "I really am sorry about, yesterday." Dylan exhaled a soft laugh. "Honestly, it made my day more interesting. Don't sweat it." He jerked his chin toward the older woman who was now inside the recovery room. "You're good with people." She shrugged, unsure if it was a compliment or just an observation. "I like helping. It's why I'm here." He glanced at her, something thoughtful dancing in his expression. "You ever consider going to nursing school or something along that track? You seem empathetic." Olivia swallowed, not expecting the question. "I did once. Life got in the way." Dylan was about to speak again, but a resident poked her head out from behind a partition. "Dr. Avery, they need you in consultation room B." He gave Olivia a final nod before hurrying off. She lingered in the hallway, heart racing, as if she'd just finished a sprint. His questions stirred old dreams she'd buried under layers of disappointment. That evening, after her shift, Olivia reached out to Leah. They arranged to meet in a cozy cafe not far from the hospital. It had been months since they'd sat down face to face, and Olivia felt both relief and apprehension as she slid into a small booth across from her younger sister. Leah sipped her coffee. "You look tired, Liv." Olivia fiddled with her napkin. "Busy day at the hospital. Volunteering." "Volunteering?" Leah raised an eyebrow. "I thought you were done with hospitals after, Mom." "Me too," Olivia said quietly, "but I need the experience. Maybe to open doors for a better job. Something about being there despite the smell of disinfectant feels right." Leah's expression softened. "I'm happy you're doing something that helps people. That suits you." They talked a while about family news and Leah's job at a real estate agency. But Olivia hesitated to mention Dylan, or the moment she stumbled into the operating room. Some part of her wanted to keep that bizarre, electric moment to herself, like a secret that was still unfolding. When Leah asked if she was dating anyone, Olivia shook her head. "I've got enough on my plate." She wasn't lying, nor was she ready to admit the strange churn of emotion she felt whenever she recalled Dr. Avery's calm, steady tone, or the way his presence seemed to fill a room. Later that night, as she lay in bed, she caught herself imagining various scenarios. What if she ran into him again? Would he ask about her ambitions? Would he see through her insecurities? Perhaps it was foolish, given her world was light years away from his, but the whisper of possibility lodged itself in her heart. Maybe, just maybe, their paths were meant to cross for more than one accidental hallway encounter. Morning broke over Manhattan with a dull haze, and Dylan Avery pulled on a crisp dress shirt for a meeting with the hospital board. Though primarily a surgeon, he was also an Avery, a name tied to a vast fortune and a seat on multiple philanthropic boards. His father, Howard Avery, had made sure Dylan would never forget his responsibilities to the family legacy. At St. Jerome's, the boardroom overlooked the bustling city. The glass walls offered a panoramic view, but it felt more like a cage to Dylan. He nodded politely as administrators discussed financial matters, expansions, and possible charity programs. He contributed comments about patient care, but his mind drifted to a simpler interaction. A volunteer guiding an elderly woman to the recovery room, her expression earnest and kind. Just as the meeting wrapped, Howard Avery stepped in, exuding the regal presence that made him both respected and feared. "Dylan," he intoned in a voice accustomed to commanding attention, "I trust everything is under control here." Dylan forced a polite smile. "The hospital's doing fine, Dad." Howard's gaze swept over the room and then returned to Dylan. "Good. I'd like a word in private." Once alone, Howard took a measured breath. "The Avery Foundation has a gala coming up. I want you front and center, reminding everyone where our family stands." "I'm not a politician," Dylan replied, trying to keep his tone even. "I'm a surgeon. I'd rather be in the OR than—" "You don't have a choice," Howard cut in. "Your presence influences donors. We can't fund expansions, can't help as many people, if you're not part of the face of this operation." Dylan clenched his jaw. He knew fighting was useless. "I'll be there." Howard nodded, satisfied. "We'll finalize details soon. Don't forget your role, Dylan." And with that, he strode out, leaving behind the faint echo of footsteps that always made Dylan feel like he was a teenager again, overshadowed by his father's dominance. Downstairs, Olivia was juggling volunteer tasks. She had a new assignment, guiding patients to imaging tests. Although it was less intense than inadvertently crashing an operating room, the stress still gnawed at her. She constantly worried about messing up. Yet every time she successfully delivered a patient to their destination, she felt a glimmer of hope that she might find her place in this medical maze. Midway through the day, she saw Dylan stepping off an elevator on his way to do rounds. Their eyes met briefly, and a flicker of recognition passed between them. He gave her a nod, a subtle acknowledgement that made her cheeks warm. She forced herself to keep moving. A short while later, she was on her lunch break, seated in a quiet corner of the cafeteria with a modest salad. Her phone buzzed, an unknown number. She almost ignored it, but decided to pick up. "Olivia Bailey." The voice belonged to an older woman. "My name is Jean Hawkins from the Caldwell Medical Center. I got your resume for the receptionist position. We'd like you to come in for an interview tomorrow morning." Olivia's heart jumped. "Really? That's great. Thank you so much." She ended the call and released a shaky breath. Caldwell Medical was smaller, closer to her apartment, and offered a full-time receptionist role. She needed a stable income desperately. Excitement fluttered in her stomach, even as her mind whirled. If she got the job, she might leave St. Jerome's behind. So soon after she'd met. Well, never mind. She shook her head, reminding herself that daydreams about a certain surgeon were hardly a reason to stay. As fate would have it, Dylan passed through the cafeteria at that moment. He spotted Olivia, noticed the mix of excitement and anxiety on her face. On impulse, he crossed over. "Everything okay?" he asked, startling her from her thoughts. She looked up, caught off guard. "Oh, Dr. Avery. Yes, I'm fine. Actually, I just got some good news about a job interview." "That's excellent," he said, genuinely sounding pleased. "Here in the city," she nodded, "at Caldwell Medical." He pulled out a chair, not quite sitting but leaning on the back. "Congratulations. You must be excited." "I am." She fiddled with her fork. "Just a bit nervous." He studied her for a moment. "Any reason you'd prefer Caldwell over St. Jerome's?" "If you don't mind me asking," Olivia shrugged, feeling a wave of self-consciousness. "St. Jerome's is amazing, but I'm a volunteer. I need something permanent, you know?" He nodded slowly. "Makes sense." Glancing around, he lowered his voice. "We're short-staffed in certain admin roles here. If you'd prefer St. Jerome's, I could try to recommend you." Her eyes widened. That's really kind, but you don't have to do that." "We've barely spoken," Dylan offered a brief, wry smile. "Sometimes you just notice someone who's genuine at what they do, and we need more people like that." She hesitated, torn between gratitude and the nagging fear that accepting his help would spark rumors or turn her into another project for a wealthy doctor. "I appreciate it, but I'll see how the interview goes first." He dipped his head in understanding. "Of course. Good luck." Then he straightened, as if remembering he was a busy man with places to be. "If you change your mind, let me know." She thanked him quietly, and he walked off, leaving behind a swirl of possibilities. The idea of leaving St. Jerome's triggered an unexpected pang. Though she told herself that was ridiculous, she didn't belong in Dr. Avery's world. He was a top surgeon with philanthropic ties and a father who practically ran half the city. She was just Olivia Bailey, a volunteer living paycheck to paycheck, chasing a dream that might never fully materialize. Still, the conversation lingered in her mind for the rest of the day, echoing in every idle moment. Despite their vastly different lives, the connection she felt, even if faint, was undeniable, and that both thrilled and terrified her. Late that evening, as the bustle of hospital life waned, Olivia found herself assigned to the main reception desk for one final hour. The overhead lights hummed, and the emptier corridors created a hushed atmosphere. She shifted in her seat, stealing a glance at the clock. Tomorrow's interview loomed in her thoughts, conjuring both excitement and dread. She heard footsteps and looked up to see Dr. Avery approaching, his lab coat draped casually over one arm. He seemed as if he'd just wrapped a long shift, weariness etched in the lines near his eyes, yet there was also an energy about him, like a force of will pushing him forward even when exhausted. "Hey," he said softly, as if trying not to disturb the quiet air. "Burning the midnight oil?" Olivia offered a small smile. "Volunteers don't have the best shift sometimes, but I'm almost done." Dylan nodded, placing his coat on the counter. "I'm finishing up too. Got to review a couple more charts before I head out." He paused, then added, "You nervous about tomorrow?" She exhaled shakily. "More than I'd like to admit." "Do you mind if I ask why you're so keen on moving on so quickly?" His tone was gentle, purely curious. She hesitated, weighing how much to share. "I'm 36, and I still haven't found stable ground. I've spent years hopping between odd jobs, admin temp work, retail, anything that pays the bills. This volunteer stint was just one more chance to see if I fit in somewhere. Dylan listened intently, his gaze steady. "You're capable of more than you give yourself credit for," he said. "I noticed that about you from the moment you walked into the OR." She let out a self-conscious laugh. "That was an accidental entrance, not some grand demonstration of skill." He shook his head, smiling faintly. "Even so, you didn't freeze. You apologized, took responsibility, and you haven't let that moment define you. That says something." She was about to respond when the phone rang on the desk, and she had to answer. After directing the caller, she turned back to Dylan, but he was already collecting his coat. An odd silence settled, a pause laden with unspoken possibilities. "Good luck tomorrow," he murmured. "Whichever path you take." Before she could thank him, he turned and headed down the hallway, footsteps echoing until they disappeared. She sat there, heart thrumming, wishing she had more time to ask him about his life, his family, why he seemed so genuinely interested in her future. The next morning, a pale sun fought through low-hanging clouds as Olivia stood outside Caldwell Medical Center. Anxiety twisted her stomach, but she inhaled deeply and marched inside. The interview itself was straightforward. Typical questions about her administrative experience, her ability to handle patient interactions, her reliability. She stumbled a bit when asked about her greatest strengths, but overall, she felt she hadn't done too badly. By noon, the interview was over and she was back on the sidewalk, staring at passing cabs. A voice in her head said, "You can do this. You have to believe." Yet another voice whispered doubts, reminding her of every disappointment that led her here. She returned to her apartment, changed out of her interview clothes, and caught the bus to St. Jerome's for her afternoon volunteer shift. Her chest tightened as she stepped through the familiar glass doors. If Caldwell hired her, today could be one of her last times here. Once again, she found herself assigned to various errands around the hospital, from delivering documents to the lab to guiding a lost patient to the cardiology wing. She felt a strange melancholy, noticing how comfortable she was becoming with these routine tasks. In the midst of the hustle, a staff member handed her a note. "Please report to Dr. Avery's office, 5th floor." Her heart thumped faster. She hadn't even known Dylan had a personal office on the 5th floor. She'd assumed he only used the doctor's lounge and the surgical staff offices. Clutching the note, she took the elevator, stepping out into a quieter corridor lined with a few private offices for senior physicians. Outside the door, labeled Dr. Dylan Avery, surgical lead. She paused, then knocked. His voice, warm yet firm, bid her enter. She eased the door open, curiosity piqued. Dylan stood behind a simple desk, cluttered with medical journals and patient files. His expression softened when he saw her. "Hey, close the door, please." She did, carefully. "Is something wrong?" He leaned against the desk's edge. "Not at all. I heard you had your interview this morning. How'd it go?" Surprised, she answered honestly. "It went okay, I think. They'll let me know in a few days." He inclined his head. "Good." A quiet moment hung between them before he continued. "I spoke with administration here. There's an opening for an administrative assistant position in the outpatient department. It's entry level, but it comes with benefits and a chance to grow." Her breath caught. "But why would they consider me? I'm just a volunteer with no formal medical training." "You've shown dedication, empathy, and a willingness to learn," he said, eyes unwavering. "I gave my personal recommendation. You'd need to go through a standard hiring process, of course, but it's yours to apply for if you want." Olivia's mind spun. This offer was unexpected, possibly life-altering. She wanted to say yes immediately, but something made her pause. Images of Howard Avery, the board, the wealthy donors. Was she stepping into a world that would swallow her whole? Or was she letting fear hold her back from a real chance? She swallowed. I appreciate it, really. I just need time to think. He nodded, his gaze understanding. Take the time you need, but don't sell yourself short. She thanked him, her voice trembling slightly with gratitude and uncertainty. Stepping out into the hallway, she felt as though she stood at a crossroads with two potential futures, one at Caldwell, one at St. Jerome's, each carrying its own weight of risk and promise. A surge of anticipation swelled in her chest, as though her life was finally on the brink of change. Little did she know, she was also standing at the edge of something far more complicated, an entanglement of feelings and destinies that had already begun weaving them both into the same tapestry. Olivia woke before dawn, her heart hammering with anticipation. She had tossed and turned all night, wrestling with the idea of leaving St. Jerome's for Caldwell Medical or seizing the position Dylan had arranged. Her apartment felt stifling, boxes of old memories stacked in corners, the faint smell of coffee lingering from yesterday's stale brew. She needed fresh air, so she pulled on a light jacket and ventured outside. The early morning streets were quiet, a few stray cars humming by. In the cool light, she found her thoughts drifting to Dr. Avery, how he'd quietly vouched for her, how he'd seen something worthwhile in her amidst all her self-doubt. The fact that he was a wealthy heir with a father hovering like a storm cloud didn't change the genuine warmth he'd shown. By the time she arrived at the hospital for her volunteer shift, the corridors were already starting to buzz. She had no official tasks scheduled for the first hour, so she decided to check in with the outpatient department. A part of her wanted to see if the administrative position Dylan mentioned was truly real. Another part simply missed the sense of purpose she felt here. In the outpatient admin office, she approached a petite woman wearing bright red glasses. The woman introduced herself as Grace, the department coordinator. She greeted Olivia warmly, handing her some forms. "You must be Olivia Bailey, doctor. Avery mentioned you might be interested in applying." Olivia felt a jolt of surprise at how swiftly Dylan had acted. "Yes, ma'am. I'm here just to ask a few questions about the position." Grace explained the details: starting wage, benefits, responsibilities. It wasn't glamorous, but it offered stability and a potential career path, something Olivia had dreamed about for years. She listened intently, torn between excitement and lingering hesitation. When Grace finished, she added, "We'd be lucky to have you. Dr. Avery spoke very highly of your empathy and composure. That's rare." Heat rose in Olivia's cheeks. I appreciate that. I just want to be sure I'm the right fit." "Well," Grace said with a grin, "I think you'd know better than anyone what you're ready for." Olivia left the office with a handful of paperwork and a heart thrumming with possibility. She bumped straight into Dylan in the hallway. He seemed a little out of breath, as if he'd rushed from somewhere important. He offered a quick smile. "Hey, are those the forms for the position?" She nodded, holding them up. "Yeah. Grace was super helpful. I'm thinking about it." His gaze flickered with relief. "Good, I'm glad. Let me know if there's anything else you need." Before she could say more, he glanced at his watch, excused himself, and hurried off toward the elevators. Even in that brief moment, Olivia noted the tension in his eyes, a strain that hinted at more than mere hospital duties. Later that afternoon, as she helped escort patients to radiology, she heard whispers of an upcoming hospital gala, something about the Avery Foundation. Nurses gossiped about Dr. Avery's presence there, how he never brought a date, how his father constantly pushed him to network. Olivia listened from the sidelines, quietly absorbing a world that felt both alien and intriguing. Just before she clocked out, she ran into Stephen, the volunteer coordinator who'd first greeted her. He gave a friendly wave. "I hear you might be leaving us," he said gently. "You know we'll miss you, right?" Olivia tried to hide her conflicted feelings. I haven't decided yet, but I've been offered a real opportunity here. I'm just worried I might disappoint Caldwell Medical if I bail on them after interviewing. Stephen placed a supportive hand on her shoulder. You have to do what's best for your future, and sometimes it means following the path that scares you least, or maybe the one that inspires you most. That evening, on her bus ride home, Olivia let her mind wander. The city lights flickered outside the bus window, a blur of movement and life. She thought about how different her world was from Dylan's. A small voice inside her insisted that she was only an obligation to him, perhaps a fleeting interest or a philanthropic gesture. But then she remembered the sincerity in his eyes and how he'd never once treated her like a charity case. Back at her apartment, she prepared a simple dinner of microwaved pasta. Halfway through, her phone rang. It was Leah. With a sigh of relief at having a distraction, she answered. "Liv, how are you?" Leah's voice was warm. Olivia sank onto the couch. "A bit overwhelmed. I got 2 job possibilities now, thanks to this volunteer gig." She explained the situation, including Dr. Avery's personal recommendation. Leah was silent for a moment before she responded. "And how do you feel about this doctor? Is there, I don't know, something more going on?" Olivia hesitated, not sure how to put it into words. "I don't know. He's different. Kind in a quiet way, but he's also got his own issues. A father who expects him to be this perfect public figure." Leah let out a soft chuckle. "Sounds complicated. Just be careful, okay? If it's too good to be true, maybe it is. And remember, you're worth more than you realize." After hanging up, Olivia sat in the dimly lit apartment, the hum of the refrigerator the only companion to her thoughts. Was she reading too much into Dylan's interest? Or was there a genuine spark between them, one that could break the barriers of class, status, and her own insecurities? She glanced at the stack of forms from St. Jerome's. One signature, and she could lock in a chance to build a real career. A chance that might keep her closer to a man who made her heart flutter, though she wouldn't admit it outright. But am I ready for this? She wondered, turning the pages with trembling hands. She had no answers yet, only the quiet thrill of a decision that might alter the course of both her life and her heart. Dylan stood in the glass-walled conference room, arms folded, listening as a senior colleague detailed upcoming surgeries and staff assignments. Beyond the windows, the hospital soared with activity, its maze of corridors and rooms teeming with life. Usually, he thrived in this environment, focused, skillful, ready for anything. But today, he couldn't stop his thoughts from drifting to Olivia. Had she signed the forms, chosen Caldwell? He reminded himself he had no right to demand an answer, especially when he wasn't even sure what he truly wanted from her beyond an inexplicable pull. After the briefing, he stepped out, only to be confronted by Howard Avery, who seemed to materialize from nowhere. His father's imposing figure and tailored suit commanded the hallway. "Son," Howard said in his deep timbre, "we have a problem with the donors for the gala. One of the corporate sponsors wants you to address them personally at the event." Dylan suppressed a sigh. "I'll be there. I already agreed." Howard's stern gaze hardened. "You'll not just be there. You'll engage, charm, and secure their ongoing support. And I strongly suggest you bring a suitable date." "Appearances matter, Dylan." His father's words carried the weight of a lifetime of expectations. Dylan's jaw tightened. "I'm not dragging someone into that circus just for show." Howard waved a dismissive hand. "This is how the world works, especially for an Avery. You'd best remember that." With that, the older man turned and strode off, leaving Dylan wrestling with a familiar knot of frustration. In the meantime, Olivia was on her lunch break, sitting in the small staff lounge. She was reading the outpatient admin job description again, her heart still torn. The door opened, and a petite nurse with short blonde hair, Marianne, according to her name badge, stepped in. She offered Olivia a polite smile and a wave before rummaging in the fridge for her lunch. Olivia tried to be friendly. "Hey, Marianne, slow day." Marianne laughed softly. "Never at St. Jerome's." "But I can dream." She eyed the papers in Olivia's hand. "Job application." "Yeah," Olivia admitted. "I'm a volunteer, but Dr. Avery recommended me for this." Marianne's brows shot up. "That's impressive. Dylan doesn't usually take such direct interest in administrative staffing." She paused, perhaps realizing how personal that sounded. "I just mean he's usually too buried in surgery schedules and philanthropic events." Olivia fiddled with the corner of the forms. "So, he's always that busy?" "Busy and guarded," Marianne replied, choosing her words carefully. "He's a wonderful surgeon, but everything else, his family, the Avery empire, keeps him on edge." She shrugged. "I think he's lonely, if you ask me, though he'd never admit it." Olivia felt a jolt of empathy she couldn't quite explain. "I suppose it's not easy balancing a career like his with all those pressures." Marianne gave her a knowing look. "No, it isn't." Then, with a friendly nod, she left the lounge, leaving Olivia more aware than ever of the complicated world Dylan occupied. When Olivia returned to her volunteer station, she found a small envelope waiting for her with her name on it. Inside was an invitation to the Avery Foundation Gala, neatly printed, with a handwritten note from Dylan. "In case you'd like to attend, no pressure, just an open door." Her heart pounded. Why would he invite her to such an exclusive event? She wasn't part of the usual crowd that frequented galas. She could imagine the rich and powerful swirling around in elegant gowns, while she'd be the odd one out. Yet a spark of curiosity and excitement welled up inside her. Was this an invitation for her to see him outside the hospital's rigid hierarchy, or a gesture of gratitude for her volunteer work? That evening, she caught Dylan in the hallway, determined to clarify. "Dr. Avery," she called softly, stepping toward him. He stopped, checking that no one was within earshot. "Please, just call me Dylan," he said with a half smile. He nodded toward the envelope in her hand. "I guess you got my note." Olivia held it up. I'm not sure what to say. This is, well, fancy. Are you sure it's meant for me?" He exhaled quietly. "I understand if it's not your scene. But I want you to see more of what this hospital is about, beyond the corridors and the volunteer station. The gala raises essential funds, so you'd be there as part of the team. Or," he added gently, "you could just come as yourself, no expectations." She swallowed hard. "I'm not exactly gala material." A flicker of something, maybe disappointment, crossed his face. "Neither am I," he admitted in a lower tone. "But apparently we both have to fake it at times." Olivia felt her pulse quicken. "I'll think about it." He nodded, stepping aside for a passing nurse. Their eyes met briefly, as if exchanging silent questions neither dared to voice. Then he was gone, leaving Olivia clutching the invitation, her mind racing. That night, she debated calling Leah to ask for advice, but something held her back. Maybe she wanted to keep this possibility private, a small spark of magic in a life that had seen too many dashed hopes. She didn't want skepticism or warnings to cloud the sense of wonder blossoming in her chest. Alone in her apartment, she set the invitation on her rickety kitchen table. If she took the job at St. Jerome's, this hospital would become her daily life. And if Dylan was a part of that life, somehow, did she dare risk a deeper entanglement that might end in heartbreak? She tapped the words on the envelope with trembling fingers, caught between the fear of overstepping her place and the thrill of stepping into unknown territory. Beneath all the uncertainties lay an undeniable truth. She wanted to discover what could lie beneath the surface of Dr. Dylan Avery's carefully composed exterior, and perhaps her own carefully guarded heart as well. Olivia stood at a bustling boutique downtown, eyeing a rack of formal dresses. She'd told Leah she needed something decent for a hospital event, omitting the gala's grand scale. The last thing she wanted was her younger sister fretting over the potential complications of spending an evening in the orbit of the Averys. Leah, holding a sleek navy blue gown, shot Olivia a questioning glance. "So, this event, how fancy is it? Black tie, cocktail attire?" Olivia shifted uncomfortably. "Black tie, I think, but I'm not sure. It's a fundraiser for the hospital, so I just want to look appropriate." She tried not to let her nerves show as she browsed through dresses she could barely afford. Leah placed a hand on her hip. "Liv, I know you. You hate dressing up. Why the sudden interest in going to a swanky shindig?" Trying for nonchalance, Olivia shrugged. "I'm volunteering. I might need to help out with registration or greeting donors." It wasn't entirely a lie. She could end up doing something along those lines. Leah eyed her suspiciously. "Right, and does this have anything to do with that doctor you mentioned, the one who recommended you for a job?" A jolt of worry made Olivia flinch. "Leah, seriously? It's just a hospital thing. Don't read into it." Her sister's gaze softened. "I'm not trying to pry, but you've been through a lot. The last thing you need is heartbreak from some privileged guy who thinks he can fix everything with money." Olivia felt a twinge of defensiveness. "He's not like that, at least not from what I've seen. Besides, I'm a big girl. I can take care of myself." Leah sighed, then handed over the navy blue gown. "Just promise you'll be careful." "I want you to find happiness, not more disappointment." Olivia nodded, hugging the dress. It was surprisingly elegant in its simplicity, a sleeveless cut that flattered her figure without being too revealing. She looked at the price tag and winced, but Leah waved a dismissive hand. "Let me help you with that. Consider it an early birthday gift." Grateful yet slightly embarrassed, Olivia accepted. They finished shopping in tense camaraderie, exchanging small talk while an undercurrent of concern lingered. As they parted ways, Leah kissed her cheek. "Call me tomorrow, okay? I want to know how it goes." Heading home, Olivia could barely focus on the flicker of streetlights outside the taxi window. Her thoughts spun around the idea of stepping into a world she had never imagined. Glittering gowns, polished guests, and somewhere in the crowd, Dr. Dylan Avery, under the ever-watchful eye of his father. She clutched the dress bag tightly, wondering if she was diving headfirst into something destined to shatter her illusions. At her apartment, she hung the gown carefully, then settled on the couch to fill out the application for the St. Jerome's admin role. With each question, previous employment, educational background, she felt the weight of her patchwork resume. Yet a fierce determination sparked within her. If Dylan believed she could do this, maybe she was allowed to believe it too. The following day at St. Jerome's, Olivia dropped off her application with Grace in the outpatient department. Grace smiled warmly. "We'll process this quickly, and HR might call you for an official interview soon." Afterward, Olivia found Dylan near the elevator bank, discussing patient charts with another physician. When he finished, she cleared her throat softly. I turned in my application," she said. He looked up, a subtle warmth lighting his grey eyes. "I'm glad. Let me know if they give you any trouble." Despite her swirling feelings, Olivia managed a light grin. "I think I can handle it." Dylan nodded, but his phone buzzed, drawing his attention away. The glance he gave Olivia seemed to linger, as if he wanted to say more but couldn't find the words. She gave a small wave before moving on. That evening, with the gala just a couple of days away, Olivia tried on the navy blue gown in the privacy of her apartment. She stood before the smudged mirror in her cramped bathroom, adjusting the straps. The reflection, staring back, both startled and intrigued her. She saw a woman who looked surprisingly poised, not the timid volunteer who'd stumbled into an operating room. A woman who might, just might, hold her own in a room full of millionaires. She thought of Dylan, imagined his surprised expression if he saw her dressed like this. Her heart fluttered. Then she caught herself. What if Howard Avery took one look at her and labeled her a gold digger or a distraction? Anxious questions whirled through her mind. She was an outsider in the world of the wealthy. Could she handle the scrutiny? The night passed fitfully, and in the morning she awoke to a text from Leah. "Knock 'em dead tonight. Love you." Olivia stared at the message, realizing she hadn't fully explained how grand the gala might be, but at least her sister believed in her enough to encourage her. With trembling excitement, she gathered her dress and decided to arrive early at the hospital, where a shuttle would take staff and volunteers to the event venue. Dylan had arranged for her name to be on the staff list, so she wouldn't feel completely adrift upon arriving. Still, her nerves sizzled. She couldn't shake the feeling that this night would change everything. Perhaps that was overdramatic. Yet the faint electric buzz in her veins told her something significant awaited, whether a moment of triumph, heartbreak, or something in between. As she rode the elevator to the volunteer office, she clutched the garment bag tighter. "You belong here," she tried to tell herself, but doubt threatened to undermine her confidence. She pictured Dylan's measured smile, the way he somehow set her at ease, and she held onto that image like a lifeline. By the time she stepped out into the busy hallway, her heart was pounding. The gala was only hours away. She couldn't predict how the night would unfold, but deep down, she sensed that the lines separating her old life from a future she never dared to envision were about to blur in ways she could scarcely imagine. The gala took place in an opulent ballroom attached to a historic hotel downtown. Grand chandeliers cast a warm glow over marble floors, and classical music drifted from a small orchestra tucked near the stage. Olivia arrived with a group of hospital staff, her heart hammering as she took in the sea of glittering gowns and crisp tuxedos. She'd never seen so much elegance in one place. Crystal glasses clinked, and the scent of lilies mingled with expensive perfume. Olivia swallowed hard, adjusting the neckline of her navy gown. A volunteer name tag pinned near her shoulder labeled her as part of the St. Jerome staff, which provided some cover from curious stares. Still, she felt like an imposter. Grace spotted her and rushed over, looking radiant in a burgundy dress. "There you are," she exclaimed, pressing a program into Olivia's hand. "I'm stationed near the silent auction table. Would you mind helping me greet donors?" Olivia nodded, relieved to have a task. Of course. They wove through the crowd to a long table displaying luxury items, from rare bottles of wine to weekend getaways. Wealthy patrons sipped champagne as they scribbled bids. Olivia pasted on her warmest smile, offering assistance and explaining the cause behind each donation. Though her voice wobbled at first, she gradually found her footing. The underlying mission, raising funds for advanced medical equipment, reminded her she had a reason to be here. A deep voice behind her made her spine tingle. "Don't let these people intimidate you." She turned to see Dylan, striking in a tailored tuxedo that accentuated his broad shoulders. He held a half-full champagne flute, though by the look in his eyes, he'd barely taken a sip. She offered a tentative smile. "I'm doing my best." He glanced at the silent auction items, then leaned in slightly. "Thank you for coming, and for helping out." She shrugged, trying to appear nonchalant. "It's for a good cause." Their gazes locked for a moment, something unspoken passing between them. Then he stepped back, letting another donor approach the table. Time passed in a blur of polite conversation, forced laughter, and the rustle of formal attire. Occasionally, Olivia caught sight of Dylan across the room, speaking with board members or philanthropic giants. His posture was elegant, his smile calculated, a man performing a role he'd been trained to play. Once or twice, she noticed his father, Howard Avery, drifting near, greeting guests with the air of a king holding court. Near the end of the evening, a short program commenced. A spotlight focused on the stage, where Howard took the microphone, addressing the crowd with practiced charisma. "Welcome, esteemed guests, to the Avery Foundation Gala. Your generosity tonight will help St. Jerome's Hospital continue its mission of saving lives and shaping the future of healthcare in our community," he introduced Dylan. Praising his surgical feats and philanthropic contributions, Dylan ascended the stage, visibly tense but maintaining composure. "Thank you," he said into the microphone, scanning the crowd as if searching for something, someone. Olivia felt a shiver when his gaze briefly landed on her. She gave a small nod of encouragement. Dylan spoke about the hospital's need for state-of-the-art surgical equipment, about how every donation tonight mattered to improving patient outcomes. He thanked the donors, the volunteers, the staff. Though his words were polished, there was genuine passion behind them, an authenticity that made him stand out from the typical corporate spiel. As the applause died down, Howard took the mic again, concluding the presentation and urging everyone to mingle. People returned to chatting and dancing. The orchestra struck up a waltz. Olivia exhaled, realizing she'd been holding her breath through Dylan's entire speech. Moments later, Dylan approached her at the edge of the dance floor. He set down his champagne flute, a flicker of vulnerability in his eyes. "Thank you for being here," he said quietly, taking in her elegant attire. "You look amazing." She felt heat crawl into her cheeks. That means a lot, coming from someone who's basically the star of the night. He gave a rueful laugh. "You mean the puppet of the night. But it's almost over." Then, as the orchestra slid into a softer melody, he cleared his throat. "Would you like to dance? Just for a minute?" A flurry of nerves hit her. She glanced around at the polished couples gliding across the floor. "I'm not exactly a ballroom dancer," she confessed. "Neither am I," he admitted. He offered his hand, an unsure smile tugging at his lips. "We can fake it together." She hesitated only a second before placing her hand in his, allowing him to guide her onto the dance floor. The music washed over them, and for a brief moment, the world around them faded. They moved carefully, occasionally stumbling. She stifled a laugh when she stepped on his foot, and he grinned, unbothered. Then, as if the air around them had shifted, the light mood slipped into something more charged. She felt his heartbeat through the hand resting at her waist. Her gaze locked with his, and it was as though every fleeting moment they'd shared now coalesced into something undeniably real. But the moment ended as quickly as it began. A camera flashed nearby, capturing the attention of guests. Howard Avery's voice boomed across the room. "Dylan, come greet the mayor's table." Dylan tensed, pulling away gently. "I'm sorry," he murmured, regret lining his voice. He squeezed her hand once before breaking away and striding toward his father, who wore a faint look of disapproval. Left standing on the dance floor, Olivia felt adrenaline surge through her veins. For that one dance, she'd forgotten about social barriers and her own insecurities. In that single sweep of music, everything else had disappeared, except the feeling that she was falling, inescapably, for a man whose life might be too big for her to fit into. Olivia slipped away from the ballroom's main area, seeking a moment of solitude in an adjacent corridor lined with gilded mirrors. Her pulse was still racing from the dance, the press of Dylan's hand on her waist lingering like an echo. She struggled to gather her composure, to remind herself that this was just a fleeting moment in a world she didn't belong to. Footsteps approached. She turned, expecting Dylan, but found herself face to face with Howard Avery. The air seemed to thicken under his sharp gaze. He assessed her from head to toe, a polite yet severe expression forming on his face. "Miss Bailey, correct?" he asked, voice controlled. "I've seen you around the hospital." She nodded, throat tight. "Yes, sir." He pursed his lips, stepping closer. He was taller than she realized, and his presence felt imposing. "My son speaks highly of you. Says you're a capable volunteer, possibly joining the staff." She swallowed. "That's the plan, if I'm offered the position." Howard nodded slowly, as though he were examining a puzzle. "Good. St. Jerome's needs dedicated workers." Then his tone cooled. "I appreciate your commitment to our hospital, but I suggest you be mindful of boundaries. My son is a public figure, essential to our family's reputation. I trust you understand the importance of maintaining a professional distance." Her pulse hammered. Was he implying she was chasing Dylan for his money or status? She forced herself to stand straighter. "I don't want anything from Dr. Avery except the chance to contribute to the hospital." Howard's gaze flickered, unimpressed. "I'm sure your intentions are pure, but this world is complicated. Dylan doesn't need distractions that might compromise his focus. Do you understand me, Miss Bailey?" Her chest tightened. Was it fear, anger, or both? She nodded curtly. "I hear you." Howard managed a thin smile. "I'm glad. Enjoy the rest of your evening." He stepped past her without another word, leaving her rooted to the spot, heart pounding in indignation and shame. After a moment, she forced herself to rejoin the main hall. The gala was winding down, guests beginning to depart. Dylan, who'd been cornered by a group of donors, spotted her across the room. She gave him a quick, apologetic smile, not wanting to approach, while Howard's warning echoed in her ears. Instead, she helped Grace pack up the auction items and gather donation forms. By the time they finished, Dylan was nowhere in sight. Olivia left with the volunteer shuttle, her thoughts a tumult of confusion. Part of her burned with resentment at Howard's audacity. Another part wondered if he was right. Maybe she was stepping into deep waters. Did Dylan's life have room for her? She couldn't deny the attraction between them, but she also couldn't deny how easily she might get hurt. She arrived home well past midnight, exhaustion weighing heavy. Kicking off her heels, she let the events replay in her mind, the swirl of violins, the flash of cameras, Dylan's hand in hers, Howard's stern words. At last, she collapsed onto her bed, her dress still on, eyes drifting shut to the memory of that one magical dance. Early the next morning, her phone blared. She fumbled to answer, her voice groggy. "Hello? Hi, Olivia. This is Grace," came the bright voice on the other end. "Great news. HR reviewed your file. They want to schedule an official interview for the administrative position next week." Olivia sat up, heart leaping. "That's wonderful. Thank you so much." She scribbled down the interview details on a notepad. After the call ended, she sank against the pillows, a surge of relief mingling with residual anxiety. Despite Howard's warning, this job was hers to lose. She decided she wouldn't let anyone's disapproval block her from pursuing a future she wanted. Later that morning, she headed to St. Jerome's for a short volunteer shift. The hospital halls felt almost comforting now, their bustle and beeping machines a familiar soundtrack. As she passed the front desk, one of the secretaries waved her over. "Dr. Avery wanted me to let you know he's in the West Wing Lounge if you have a second." Hesitant but curious, Olivia made her way there. She found Dylan perched on a small sofa, looking pensive. He stood as she entered. She noticed faint circles under his eyes. as though he hadn't slept well either. "Everything okay?" she asked softly. He exhaled, running a hand through his hair. "I owe you an apology. My father, he can be direct, and I suspect he spoke to you last night. I saw the way you left, and yeah, I'm sorry." Her heart twisted, a swirl of frustration and empathy. "You don't need to apologize. It's not your fault." Dylan's jaw tensed. "I disagree. He has no right to interfere like that." His gray eyes flicked to hers. "You looked worried when you left. I don't want him scaring you off." Olivia took a slow breath. "He thinks I'm some kind of distraction, but I told him I'm just here for the job. This hospital matters to me. I won't quit because he thinks I don't belong." A moment of silence passed, a charged current flowing between them. Then Dylan murmured, "I'm glad you're staying." She offered a half smile. "Me too." He reached for her hand, hesitated, then let it drop. "I want you to know, I'm not letting him dictate my life anymore. That includes who I talk to, He paused, voice faltering. "Anyway, I just wanted to say that." Warmth fluttered in Olivia's chest, but she couldn't ignore reality. "Your father isn't just your father, Dylan. He's also a man with a lot of power. I don't want to make your life any harder." He managed a rueful laugh. "It's already complicated, trust me, and I think my life might be easier if I let myself have normal conversations, genuine connections." He glanced at her, vulnerability flashing across his features, "even if it means pushing back on him." Olivia nodded, heart pounding. An unspoken agreement seemed to settle between them. To keep talking, keep discovering. There was no promise of a smooth path, only the shared spark that neither could deny. As she turned to leave, a fragile hope lit within her, battling against the formidable shadow cast by Howard Avery. Little did she know, storms were brewing on the horizon. Forces beyond her control would soon test her resilience, and Dylan's resolve, far more than either of them could imagine. Olivia arrived at St. Jerome's early, her stomach already twisted in knots. Today was the interview for the administrative position. She'd managed only a few hours of sleep, replaying Howard's unsettling warning in her mind alongside Dylan's gentle reassurance. The hospital hallways hummed with morning energy, staff rushing in scrubs, visitors clutching coffees. She headed for HR, mentally rehearsing answers to the typical questions. In a small, glass-walled office, she met with a panel of three: Grace, a representative from Human Resources, and the head of Outpatient Administration. They asked about her past work history, her organizational skills, her ability to handle difficult patients or family members. Though nerves fluttered in her chest, she answered thoughtfully, determined to show her potential. When the interview ended, Grace walked her out. "We'll be in touch by the end of the week," Grace said with a supportive smile. "I'm rooting for you." Exhaling a shaky breath, Olivia watched Grace return to the office. This job was a chance to prove she wasn't a wanderer, that she could plant roots and build a future, maybe even a future that included a certain surgeon. She headed up 2 floors to continue her volunteer shift, passing the double doors of the surgical wing. The memory of stumbling into the OR all those weeks ago tugged at her. With a small smile, she recalled Dylan's bemused expression as she'd apologized profusely. "A wrong turn that changed my life," she thought, half in awe of how far they'd come. Her phone buzzed, startling her from the reverie. It was Leah, texting, "How'd the interview go?" "Call me if you can," Olivia sent a quick reply. "Went okay," fingers crossed, and stuffed the phone into her pocket. She would call later. For now, she needed to keep her head in the game. That afternoon, she saw Dylan emerging from a meeting room with a handful of doctors. He spotted her instantly, excused himself, and walked over. "Hey, how'd it go?" She swallowed a grin. "I think it went fine. I won't know until the end of the week, though. Relief shone in his eyes. I'm confident you'll get it. They'd be foolish not to hire you. He paused, lowering his voice. Dinner tonight? Just to celebrate or commiserate, depending on how you feel. Olivia hesitated. Part of her yearned to say yes, but Howard's stern face flashed in her memory, the warning that Dylan's focus shouldn't be compromised. Still, she couldn't ignore her own heart. I'd like that, she said softly, but somewhere low-key, maybe. He smiled. Absolutely. I know a small Italian place. No fancy dress code required. She found herself smiling back. Text me the address, and I'll meet you there. That evening, the so-called small Italian place turned out to be a cozy, family-owned restaurant tucked away on a quiet street. No valet parking, no crystal chandeliers, just checkered tablecloths and the comforting aroma of tomato sauce. Olivia felt her shoulders relax the moment she stepped inside, far from the stares and judgments of high society. They found a booth near the back. A waitress in her 50s greeted Dylan with familiarity. Long time no see, hun, and you brought company. Dylan introduced Olivia as a friend, and the waitress winked. After taking their orders, she left them with breadsticks and chilled water. Olivia peeked at Dylan over the menu. You come here often? He shrugged. I used to. When things get too intense, I like to escape for a while. The owners don't care who my father is. They just treat me like a person. She couldn't help the surge of empathy. Must be tough, always feeling eyes on you. He toyed with a breadstick. Sometimes, other times, I feel guilty complaining about a life with so many privileges. But the truth is, I didn't choose to be an Avery. It comes with strings. Their eyes locked across the booth, charged with an unspoken question. Are you willing to face those strings if we grow closer? She reached for her water, cheeks warming. I appreciate that you see me differently than most might. I'm not, some social climber, and you're not just a name to me. His expression softened. I know, he whispered. They talked about simpler things, the best pasta on the menu, a funny story about one of Dylan's patients who insisted on telling jokes in the recovery room. Laughter blended with the hum of diners around them, creating a pocket of normalcy. For an hour, they were just two people who enjoyed each other's company. After dinner, Dylan insisted on walking her to the bus stop. The streetlights cast a gentle glow on the sidewalk, and each step felt heavier with the awareness of what might be growing between them. When they reached the corner, he turned to face her. You sure you don't want a ride home? He asked gently, his breath visible in the cool night air. She shook her head. The bus is fine. I've got my routine. He nodded, lingering for a moment before quietly saying, I'm glad we did this. She smiled. Me too. Then, with a sudden burst of courage, she leaned in and pressed a tentative kiss to his cheek, a simple, warm gesture. His eyes widened slightly, a flicker of surprise melting into tenderness. For a heartbeat, they stood in electrified stillness. The bus rumbled up to the curb, and Olivia stepped back. I'll see you at the hospital. Dylan's voice was soft. Good night, Olivia. As she boarded, her heart pounded with a mix of excitement and fear. She settled into a seat, watching him through the window. He stayed there, hands in his pockets, until the bus pulled away. With each block it traveled, she felt the thrill of possibility, battling the ghosts of self-doubt. She might be stepping into deeper waters than ever before, but for the first time in years, she allowed herself to imagine a tomorrow where she wasn't alone, and that both thrilled and terrified her. The next few days at St. Jerome's flew by in a flurry of tasks and emotional undercurrents. Olivia balanced her volunteer hours with anxiously waiting for HR's decision. Each time her phone rang, she practically jumped. But they still needed more time, or so Grace said. Dylan, on the other hand, seemed more energized than ever. Their coffee break chats grew longer, filled with stories about patients, casual jokes, and sparks of chemistry neither could deny. Though they hadn't openly labeled what was happening between them, it felt like something precariously close to dating. Then, just when it seemed they might find a rhythm, a ripple of chaos rocked the hospital. One afternoon, a local news outlet published an article highlighting alleged financial mismanagement within the Avery Foundation. Though the piece was sparse on details, it hinted at the possibility of irregularities in how donations were allocated. Howard Avery wasted no time launching into damage control. He summoned a press conference, standing stoic at the podium alongside the hospital board. With cameras flashing, he declared, "These accusations are baseless. The Avery Foundation stands for integrity and transparency. We will fully cooperate with any investigation." Dylan stood behind him, arms crossed, face carefully neutral. That evening, as staff began to filter out, Olivia found Dylan in a deserted corridor, reading a text from an unknown number. His jaw tensed, frustration seething beneath the surface. "My father's spinning like crazy. He's determined to protect the Avery name at all costs. And now, lawyers are questioning old grants, digging through records. It's a mess." Olivia gently touched his arm. "Is there any truth to it? Could something shady be going on?" Dylan shook his head. "Not that I know of, but I'm not the one managing the money. That's my father's domain. I just handle the medical side, propose budgets for hospital needs. If there's any impropriety, he'd make sure it never touches me." She hesitated. "Still, this could affect you, especially if you're listed on foundation documents." His eyes flickered with worry. "I know. And if we lose major donors, the hospital's expansions will suffer. Patients will suffer." She sensed the heavy weight he carried, the same swirl of conflict between duty and personal desire. "If there's anything I can do," Dylan offered a faint, grateful smile, "just keep being you. Honestly, it helps." The following day, tension hung over St. Jerome's. Staff whispered about the article. Donors called, anxious for reassurance. Howard prowled the halls, speaking in hushed tones with lawyers. At one point, Olivia spotted him at the reception desk, flanked by two stern-faced men in suits. She ducked away, not eager to relive his disapproving glare. That afternoon, Olivia was refilling patient files in the outpatient wing when Grace rushed over, looking flustered. "Olivia, HR wants to see you. Something about a possible delay in your hiring process." Olivia's stomach clenched. "Delay?" "But they said they'd have a decision by now." "I know," Grace replied softly. "They want to explain in person. It might be tied to the foundation drama. Don't panic, okay?" Panic, of course, set in immediately. She hurried to HR, heart pounding, envisioning the worst-case scenario, that the job offer would be rescinded. Inside a small office, she found the HR rep who'd interviewed her. She wore a tight-lipped expression. "Olivia, I'm sorry for the inconvenience. We've run into a sudden hiring freeze on certain administrative roles," the woman explained. "Mr. Avery has requested a thorough budget review until these allegations are sorted out." Olivia's throat went dry. "Does that mean—" "We're putting your application on hold," the rep said, voice somber. "It doesn't mean no. It just means we can't confirm your start date or salary until we get clearance from the top. We'll contact you as soon as it's resolved." Trying to steady her breathing, Olivia thanked the rep and left. Despair bubbled within her. She'd been so close to breaking free of her unstable employment history. Now everything was on pause. All because of the Avery family's crisis. Why does my life always stall, right when it's about to move forward? She thought bitterly. She considered leaving the hospital for the day, avoiding Dylan until she could calm down. But as luck would have it, she nearly walked straight into him when turning the corner. Concern etched his face the moment he saw her expression. "Olivia, what happened?" She swallowed, forcing composure. "HR just told me the position is on hold. Something about your father's budget review. They can't hire me until the foundation mess is cleared up." Dylan closed his eyes briefly, cursing under his breath. "This is exactly what I was afraid of. I'm so sorry." Her voice trembled with frustration. "I don't blame you. I just—" She paused, trying to rein in her emotions. "I'm tired of almost getting somewhere, then having the rug pulled out from under me." Before Dylan could respond, Howard appeared at the far end of the corridor, accompanied by the same two attorneys. He spotted them, his lips tightening. Dylan touched Olivia's hand gently. "I'll fix this. I promise." She offered a weak nod, stepping aside as Howard approached. The older man barely spared Olivia a glance, instead pulling Dylan away for a hushed conversation that seemed tense. Watching them, Olivia felt an ache of helplessness. Dylan might be determined to help, but he was caught in the vortex of his father's power. And she was left on the edges, uncertain if she should stay and fight or cut her losses before she got pulled under. The next morning, Olivia dragged herself to St. Jerome's, volunteer badge pinned to her chest. Though she no longer had a guaranteed position waiting, she still had her hours to finish. She refused to let disappointment overshadow the patients who needed help. She found a small measure of comfort in the bustle of the hospital, delivering folders to the cardiology unit, fetching coffee for a frazzled nurse. These simple tasks grounded her in the present. The swirl of conversation about the Avery Foundation allegations was constant, but she forced herself to focus on tangible ways to make a difference. In the early afternoon, she noticed Dylan pacing in front of his office, phone pressed to his ear. She caught snippets of his conversation. "I'm telling you, the finances should be transparent. No, I haven't spoken to him since last night. Fine, I'll call again." He hung up with a sharp sigh, shoulders rigid. She approached cautiously. "Dylan?" His gaze snapped to hers, tension etched in every line of his face, but when he spoke, his voice was gentler than she expected. "Hey, sorry if I seem on edge. This fiasco is spiraling." She folded her arms, feeling the weight of empathy. "Any progress on clearing things up?" He shook his head. "Not really. My father's hired a legal team to comb through everything. But donors are spooked. The board is furious, and apparently we can't fill any new roles until the budget is finalized for next quarter. So, I guess my hiring is off the table." Dylan's eyes flashed with frustration. "No, it's not off. It's delayed. I'm pushing back on the freeze. I've built a case for the immediate need in outpatient admin, but I can't guarantee a swift resolution." Olivia nodded, a lump forming in her throat. "I know it's not your fault. I just hate feeling powerless." He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "You're not powerless. I wish you'd believe that." A wave of emotion passed between them. "Listen, I have an idea." She cocked her head. "What kind of idea?" He glanced around, confirming no one was eavesdropping. "I'm going to talk to my father directly, demand a meeting. If I can show him how essential that position is, maybe he'll sign off. The last thing he wants is more bad press about short staffing." Her stomach churned at the thought of him confronting Howard on her behalf, especially after that tense warning in the gala corridor. "I don't want you to risk making things worse with him. He might think I'm pressuring you." Dylan's jaw tightened. "He already disapproves. Not sure how much worse it can get. Besides, I'm done living in fear of his reaction. This hospital needs you, people like you." "That's reason enough." Emotion stirred in her chest. She reached out and squeezed his hand, a quick, reassuring gesture. "Thank you," she said softly, not trusting herself to say more. That evening, she told Leah everything over a late-night phone call, minus the deeper personal details. She tried to paint the situation in practical terms: the hiring freeze, the possibility of losing the job, her confusion. Leah listened intently, then asked, "And Dylan? Where does he fit in all this?" Olivia sighed, pacing her small living room. "He wants to help. He's even confronting his father. But I don't know if that'll fix anything, or if I'm just being naive." Her sister's voice crackled with concern. "Just be careful, Liv. Sometimes wealthy families close ranks under pressure. You might end up being the scapegoat." The notion haunted Olivia long after she ended the call. Yet she couldn't deny the warmth she felt whenever she thought of Dylan's determination. The next day, Olivia volunteered in the pediatric wing, reading stories to a couple of children waiting for test results. Their wide-eyed gratitude soothed her worries. If this was her last week at St. Jerome's, at least she was making it count. During a short break, she found Dylan in the cafeteria, stirring a cup of black coffee so vigorously it nearly spilled. He appeared exhausted. She slid into a chair across from him. "Any luck with your father?" she asked gently. He let out a humorless laugh. "He stonewalled me, said the board will handle staffing decisions after the audit. Then he changed the subject to some PR event for the foundation." A flash of anger hardened his features. "I've never felt so dismissed in my life." "Dylan?" She couldn't hide her worry. "Maybe you should step back. Let the lawyers sort it out. I don't want you to ruin your relationship with your father over my job." He met her gaze with a fierce intensity. "It's not just about the job, Olivia. It's about the principle. We need good people here, and well, you matter to me." Her heart jolted. Before she could respond, a pager beeped. Dylan checked it, frustration flickering across his face. "Emergency consult. I have to go." He stood abruptly but paused, leaning down. His next words were quiet, vulnerable. "Please don't give up on St. Jerome's yet." She swallowed, unable to speak, simply giving him a small nod. As he hurried off, she touched the table's surface, where his coffee cup still vibrated from the sudden movement. A swirl of conflicting emotions pulled at her. On one hand, she wanted to believe in Dylan's resolve, to fight for the future she'd glimpsed. On the other, fear gnawed at her, fear that she was a catalyst for even deeper rifts within the Avery empire. That night, she walked home alone, ignoring the bus for the solace of a long stroll. Streetlights cast elongated shadows on the pavement. She thought about the tense lines in Dylan's face, the fleeting softness in his voice when he said she mattered. "Do I dare hope?" she wondered, hugging her arms around herself. Yet behind that hope, a quiet dread simmered. Howard Avery and his legal team were combing through every corner of the foundation, controlling the hospital's budget as they saw fit. Olivia felt like a small pawn in a game of corporate chess, uncertain which square she'd land on next, or if she'd be knocked off the board entirely. A week later, the tension around St. Jerome's had only grown. Despite Howard Avery's insistence on normalcy, the staff remained on edge, unsure how deeply the allegations might cut into funding. Rumors flew about potential layoffs, cancelled expansions, and even possible departmental closures if the foundation's finances took a serious hit. Olivia, still volunteering, tried to remain optimistic. Yet each passing day without an update from HR felt like a slow unraveling of her dream. Dylan had grown more distant too, absorbed in never-ending meetings with administrators and lawyers. Whenever they crossed paths, he flashed an apologetic look, silently conveying that he hadn't given up. One afternoon, she found a note in her locker. "Meet me on the rooftop terrace at 6 p.m. D." Her pulse fluttered. She'd never been to the hospital's rooftop terrace. It was usually reserved for staff in need of a quiet break. Feeling both excitement and trepidation, She finished her shift and made her way up. The terrace turned out to be a narrow space surrounded by tall concrete walls with a few potted plants lining the edges. A crisp breeze tugged at Olivia's hair as she stepped outside. She found Dylan near the railing, gazing over the city skyline, the lights beginning to twinkle in the early evening. He looked worn, as though carrying the entire hospital on his shoulders. She approached quietly. "Hey." He turned, relief washing over his features. "Thanks for coming." They stood in silence for a moment, the wind rustling the potted shrubs. Finally, Dylan spoke, voice hoarse. "I wanted to see you without 100 eyes watching. It's been insane." She nodded, leaning against the railing. "I can tell. Are you okay?" He let out a bitter laugh. "Not really. My father's cornered me into a meeting with his top attorneys. They want me to make a statement clearing him of wrongdoing, basically saying I approve of all foundation operations. But I don't know if everything is above board." Olivia's heart sank. "So, they want your name to vouch for something you're not certain about." Dylan's hands gripped the metal railing, knuckles white. "Exactly. And if I refuse, the entire board might oust me from decision-making. They'd keep me as a surgeon, but I'd lose any influence over how funds are allocated, including new hires." She closed her eyes, guilt gnawing at her. "You're stuck, and it's partly because you're fighting for me." He shot her a sharp glance. "Don't ever say that. I'm fighting for what's right, for the hospital's transparency and your job. If my father's done something unethical, I won't lie to protect him." Her chest tightened, admiration mingling with worry. "But if you lose your position on the board, you might not be able to push for more staff. You might not be able to protect the hospital at all." Dylan let out a shaky breath. "I know. That's what's tearing me apart." He hesitated, eyes shadowed by frustration and something that looked like longing. "Olivia, I'm sorry for dragging you into this storm, but I need you to know how important you've become to me, beyond the hospital, beyond any job opening." Her heart thudded. "Dylan." He reached out, lightly touching her cheek, sending a tremor through her. "I want us to figure out a way through this, together." For a fleeting second, she allowed her eyes to close, leaning into his palm. The warmth of his touch was an anchor in a chaotic sea. But reality snapped back quickly, the memory of Howard's stern face haunting her. How can we figure it out when everything is on the brink? If the board kicks you out, if the foundation collapses, where does that leave us? His gaze hardened with resolve. "I'm not giving up on my career or on you. One way or another, I'll find a path." Before she could respond, the terrace door swung open, slamming against the wall. A breathless intern stumbled out. "Doctor." "Avery, they're asking for you in admin. Your father's here, and so is the CFO. It sounds urgent." Dylan clenched his jaw, stepping back from Olivia. "I'll be right there." He glanced at her, regret flickering in his eyes. "I'll call you later." She gave a brief nod, forcing herself to let him go. As he disappeared through the door, the wind seemed to grow colder, whipping strands of her hair against her face. She stared at the skyline, feeling the gulf between their worlds yawning wider. Later that night, she returned to her apartment, dropping onto her couch without bothering to switch on the lights. Her phone vibrated with a text. Leah again, probably wanting updates. But Olivia couldn't summon the energy to reassure her sister when she herself felt lost. She turned on the TV for background noise. A local news report flickered into view, repeating the allegations against the Avery Foundation. She saw a short clip of Howard outside the hospital, insisting he had nothing to hide. Then the camera cut to Dylan's photo, describing him as the reluctant heir caught in the crossfire. Olivia muted the television, sick to her stomach. Everything was unraveling. The job, Dylan's board position, their fragile bond, overshadowed by crisis. She longed for one moment of clarity, a sign telling her whether to fight for a place in his life or protect herself by walking away. But no sign came. Only the hollow flicker of the TV screen and the restless churn of her thoughts, echoing the question she couldn't avoid. Was she brave enough to stand by him when the consequences could be devastating, or should she walk out before heartbreak became inevitable? 2 days passed in a tense blur. With no official word from HR, Olivia continued her volunteer duties, though it felt like she was floating in limbo. Dylan was pulled into endless meetings, and whenever she caught sight of him, he looked more weary, his trademark calm fraying at the edges. Finally, on a Thursday afternoon, the hospital board announced a closed-door emergency session. Dylan's name buzzed across staff whispers. Some claimed he'd be forced to sign a statement. Others speculated he might step down from the foundation altogether. Olivia tried to keep her head down, occupying herself with filing and assisting patients. But her stomach twisted in dread, waiting for the fallout. Hours later, she was restocking supplies in a quiet corridor when Dylan found her. His tie was askew, and his usually immaculate hair looked rumpled. Dark circles underscored his eyes. He spoke in a low voice. "We need to talk. Can you take a break?" She glanced around. "Sure." She pulled off her volunteer vest and followed him to a small consultation room, unused at this hour. Inside, the fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, the walls lined with faded posters about patient safety. Once the door clicked shut, Dylan turned to her, anger and hurt warring on his face. "They gave me an ultimatum. Endorse my father's financial practices or lose my seat on the board immediately." Her heart sank. "I'm guessing you didn't sign." His jaw flexed. "No, I didn't. And the board voted to suspend me from decision-making. I'm still a surgeon, but I have zero authority over administrative or budget matters." Tears stung Olivia's eyes. "I'm so sorry. I know how much you care about this place." He nodded, pacing the small room. "It's worse than that. My father threatened to withdraw a chunk of foundation money if I refused to comply. That could jeopardize expansions, staff hiring, even your position, if the freeze continues." "Dylan." She reached out, but he kept pacing, a storm of frustration radiating from him. "I couldn't lie," he said, voice tight. "I can't say the finances are clean when I suspect otherwise, but now the hospital might suffer. My father claims he's doing this for the good of the Avery reputation, so no one questions our name. Meanwhile, you're caught in the crossfire." She blinked back tears. "Then maybe it's time I move on, find another position. I don't want to be a burden." He stopped abruptly. "You're not a burden. Don't ever say that." She swallowed hard. "But if staying means you lose your influence, I can't let that happen." He pressed his hands against the edge of a desk, shoulders slumping. "You don't get it. My father and I were on a collision course long before you came along. This is about me standing up for my own integrity. If you leave, he'll still find a way to manipulate me." A thick silence weighed between them. Olivia drew closer, gently touching his arm. "So what do we do?" He turned to her, eyes rimmed with exhaustion. "I don't know. For now, I keep being a surgeon, helping patients. You keep volunteering until the official word about your job. Maybe we ride it out. Or maybe—" His voice broke slightly. "Maybe it all falls apart." Her throat felt tight. She wrapped her arms around him, resting her head on his shoulder. After a moment's hesitation, he let out a ragged breath and folded her into an embrace. They stood like that for a minute, silent in the sterile consultation room, the weight of possibility crushing them both. At length, they stepped apart, and Dylan brushed a strand of hair from her face. "I'm sorry," he murmured. I wanted to protect you from all this. She shook her head. You don't have to apologize. I knew getting close to you might be complicated, but I care about you, Dylan. A glimmer of gratitude flickered in his weary eyes. He leaned down, pressing his lips to hers in a kiss that tasted of desperation and hope. She returned it, letting her fears momentarily dissolve in the warmth of his touch. For that heartbeat, she clung to him, cherishing the sense of belonging that felt so fragile. When they separated, reality rushed back in. I should get back, she whispered, voice trembling with emotion. I'm still on the clock as a volunteer. He nodded, unwilling to let her go, but knowing he must. Let's talk tonight. Sure. She offered a watery smile, then slipped out the door. As she made her way down the corridor, the echo of that kiss lingered. It felt like a turning point, an affirmation that what they had was real, no matter the chaos swirling around them. Yet beneath the flutter of her heart lay a heavy question. Could love alone withstand the forces of a powerful family, a hospital in crisis, and a father determined to keep them apart? She glanced at her phone. No missed calls from HR, no new text from Leah, just the steady hum of the hospital enveloping her. For the first time since stepping into that operating room by mistake, she grasped that she was standing at the story's midpoint, a threshold that would determine how everything else would unfold. In romance stories, the midpoint often promised a glimpse of happiness before the storm truly hit. Olivia couldn't help but wonder if this kiss, this moment of truth, would be the last calm before the darkness closed in. Olivia stood at the entrance to St. Jerome's, clutching her volunteer badge like a lifeline. A brisk wind swept leaves across the hospital's front steps, signaling the shift from autumn's warmth to the chill of looming winter. The symbolic change wasn't lost on her. After that tender kiss with Dylan, the harsh reality of the Avery Foundation scandal felt even colder. Inside, the usual bustle of patients and staff buzzed with an undercurrent of anxiety. Whispers of budget cuts, board disputes, and frozen funds drifted from every corner. Olivia felt the tension winding tighter. The crisis at the foundation wasn't abating. If anything, it was intensifying. She made her way to the volunteer office, signing in for what might be one of her final days. The hiring freeze meant she still had no news about the administrative position, yet something told her she couldn't simply walk away. Not with Dylan fighting for honesty and for her. Mid-morning, she passed the cafeteria and spotted Dr. Avery Sr., Howard, accompanied by two men in severe suits. Even from across the hall, she felt the weight of his disapproving stare. He didn't speak, but his gaze lingered. A chill slid through her. Why is he here so often now? She knew the answer: damage control. The Avery name was under fire, and Howard intended to salvage it at all costs. Olivia hurried past, hoping to avoid a confrontation. As she turned a corner, she nearly collided with Mary Ann, the petite nurse from radiology. Mary Ann's usually bright expression looked strained. "Are you okay?" Olivia asked gently. Mary Ann sighed. "It's hectic. A couple of staff are afraid their contracts won't be renewed, so morale's plummeting." Then, glancing around, she lowered her voice. "Keep your guard up. Howard Avery's been asking about certain volunteers and staff. Who's necessary? Who's expendable? Some say he's using the scandal as an excuse to slash positions." A lump formed in Olivia's throat. "Thanks for the warning." Mary Ann gave her a sympathetic pat on the arm, then hurried off. Anxiety churned in Olivia's stomach. She understood now. For Howard Avery, protecting the family empire meant getting rid of any liabilities or anyone he deemed a distraction. By noon, Olivia's nerves were frayed. She wandered into a small staff lounge to eat lunch, but found herself unable to take more than a few bites of her sandwich. Just then, Dylan slipped in, looking over his shoulder as if making sure he wasn't followed. His expression softened the moment he saw her, but stress pulled at the corners of his eyes. He sank into the chair beside her. "We need to talk, but not here," he murmured, casting a glance at the open doorway. "Meet me after your shift. There's a coffee shop across the street. Marino's," she nodded, heart thumping. "I'll be there." That afternoon was a blur of assisting patients and delivering files, but her thoughts kept drifting to Dylan's urgent tone. By the time her volunteer shift ended, her chest was tight with apprehension. She walked to Marino's, a modest, family-owned cafe with soft lighting and the aroma of espresso. Dylan was already waiting in a corner booth, 2 steaming cups on the table. He motioned for her to sit. "I ordered you a latte. Hope that's okay." She slid into the seat across from him. "Thank you," she said, voice quieter than she intended. "What's going on?" Dylan exhaled, wrapping his hands around his mug. "Howard's threatening to cut certain patient programs if the board won't clear him of suspicion. He's basically holding the hospital hostage." Frustration radiated from him. "He's also hinted that your volunteer role and any hope for your hire could be terminated. He knows we're close, Liv." Her heart clenched. "So he's using me to pressure you?" A grim nod. "That's exactly it. He thinks if you're gone, I'll have nothing left to fight for and will fall in line." Dylan's eyes burned with anger. "He's underestimating my resolve." Olivia swallowed hard, the latte suddenly tasting bitter. "What do we do?" He leaned forward, lowering his voice. "I've been digging into some of the Foundation's public records. There's a pattern of questionable transfers, funds allocated to shell organizations that funnel back into Avery family holdings. If that's proven, Howard could face legal trouble." Her jaw dropped. "Are you sure?" "I'm sure something's off, but I need more concrete evidence. If I can prove wrongdoing, the board might remove Howard instead of me. Then the Foundation could be saved from scandal, and the hospital wouldn't suffer." He hesitated before continuing. "I know a journalist investigating this story. If I share what I've found, it could blow up. But it also might force the board's hand." Olivia's pulse hammered. "That's risky. If you go against your father publicly, who knows what he'll do?" Dylan gripped her hand across the table. "I'm prepared to deal with him. I'm more worried about how this affects you. If you become a target—" She squeezed back. "I'm not running. I want to help if I can." His eyes flickered with gratitude. "Then maybe we keep our distance in public for a bit. Just until I sort things out. If Howard sees us together, he'll clamp down harder." Her chest tightened at the thought of stepping back, yet the logic was undeniable. "I understand," she said softly, struggling to keep disappointment from her voice. Dylan's eyes shone with regret. "We'll make it through this, Olivia. I promise." She wanted to believe him. Still, dread coiled in her gut, warning that once Howard Avery locked on a target, he wouldn't relent until he'd crushed every threat to his empire. Olivia returned to her apartment that night, mind buzzing. She closed the door and leaned against it, the faint hum of traffic outside her window. If Dylan went through with exposing his father, everything could change. His position, her future at St. Jerome's, even the hospital's funding. But if he stayed silent, the corruption would fester, and Howard's grip would only tighten. She thought back to Mary Ann's warning, the frightened faces of staff unsure if they'd have jobs next month. This was bigger than her or Dylan. It was about truth versus fear. Sinking onto the couch, she stared at her phone. Leah had texted, "Any update on the job?" She typed a quick reply. "Still frozen. More complicated than I can say now. We'll call soon." Then set the phone aside. In the quiet darkness, she remembered Dylan's hand on hers, the determination in his eyes. She had never wanted to be someone's cause, nor had she imagined stepping into a corporate battlefield. Yet here she was, caught in the crosshairs of a feud that ran deeper than she could have guessed. "Stay strong," she told herself, though her voice trembled in her own mind. The bad guys were indeed closing in, and it would take every bit of courage she had not to lose the fragile bond she'd found, or the hope that tomorrow might bring a chance at a life she never dared to dream. Dark clouds rolled overhead as Olivia entered St. Jerome's the next morning, mirroring her uneasy heart. She headed straight for the volunteer desk, trying to project calm. A handful of tasks awaited, guiding a patient to radiology, updating supply inventory. She clung to those small responsibilities like anchors. Routine, at least, offered some relief from the storm swirling around her. Midway through her shift, she was summoned to a meeting room she'd never entered before, one typically used by department heads. The request came from a stern-sounding admin assistant who wouldn't disclose details. Olivia's gut twisted. Was this about her volunteer status being revoked? She arrived to find Howard Avery seated at a long table, flanked by two individuals, a woman in a neat grey suit and a man with a briefcase, likely lawyers, no one else. The fluorescent lighting cast harsh shadows across Howard's face, emphasizing every line of disapproval. "Close the door, please," he said. His voice was calm, almost too calm, sending a prick of apprehension down her spine. Olivia complied, feeling a wave of déjà vu from their tense encounter at the gala, except now the hostility was more blatant. She remained standing. Howard motioned for her to sit, and she perched stiffly on a chair at the far end of the table. The woman in grey flipped open a manila folder, revealing some documents. The man next to her adjusted his wire-rimmed glasses, eyeing Olivia with cool detachment. Howard cleared his throat. "Miss Bailey, you and I have had limited but pointed conversations. You might recall my concerns about your involvement with my son." His tone dripped with condescension. She fought to keep her composure. "I remember." He steepled his fingers. "I won't mince words. Dylan is pushing to expose alleged financial missteps within my foundation. I suspect you've encouraged him in this misguided crusade." Her pulse hammered, but she kept her face neutral. "I haven't encouraged anything illegal or unethical. If Dylan suspects wrongdoing, he's free to investigate. That's his right." Howard's eyes narrowed. "You speak as though you have a moral high ground, but let's be clear. The Avery Foundation has done immeasurable good for this hospital and the community. Mistakes may happen in any large organization. That doesn't justify a witch hunt." The woman beside him slid a sheet of paper across the table. "Miss Bailey, we're prepared to settle any concerns you might have about the job freeze or your future here. If you sign this non-disclosure agreement, you'll receive a severance payment, enough to, say, relocate or find another position elsewhere." Olivia's mouth went dry. "What?" Howard's tone was almost casual. "In exchange, you'd withdraw your volunteer services immediately and cease contact with my son. We can't have you influencing his decisions when he's under extreme pressure." She stared at the document in disbelief. "They're trying to pay me off." The man with the briefcase pushed a pen toward her. Her voice shook with indignation. "Why would I sign this? I've done nothing wrong." Howard's expression hardened. "It's a generous offer, Miss Bailey. Consider it a safety net. My son's defiance will lead nowhere good. If you remain entangled, you'll be swept up in his downfall. Your job prospects will vanish. This payment ensures you land on your feet." Olivia's cheeks burned with anger. "I don't want your hush money. And if you think you can buy me out of Dylan's life, you don't know me at all." A flicker of annoyance crossed Howard's face. "I see. You're more attached than I suspected." She rose from the chair, hands trembling. "Dylan's trying to do what's right for the hospital. If you truly believed in helping people, you wouldn't be threatening or bribing me. You'd clean up your foundation's mess." The lawyers exchanged glances, but Howard kept his gaze locked on Olivia. Silence crackled, thick and charged. Finally, he spoke, his voice low. "This will be your only opportunity. Reject it, and you'll face the consequences. No job here. Potential blacklisting from other hospitals we fund. Is that what you want? Her legs felt weak, but she forced herself to stand tall. I won't be bullied. I'll find a way, even if it's not at St. Jerome's, and I won't abandon Dylan. She turned on her heel and walked out, her heart pounding so violently she feared she might collapse. Once in the hallway, she ducked into a restroom, locking herself in a stall. She pressed trembling hands to her face, tears stinging her eyes. Part of her wanted to scream. Another part warned that she'd just ignited a war with a man who always got what he wanted. An hour later, she found Dylan in the doctor's lounge, pacing with a phone to his ear. When he saw her, he ended the call hastily. "You look shaken. What happened?" She recounted the meeting. Dylan's expression darkened. "He tried to pay you off." Her voice cracked. "He said they'd blacklist me from any hospital tied to the Avery Foundation. That's a lot of hospitals, Dylan." He reached out, gently cradling her cheek. "I'm so sorry. I never thought he'd stoop this low." She drew a trembling breath. "I refuse to sign, but I'm terrified. I need work. I can't live off air." Dylan's jaw set with determination. "You did the right thing. I promise I won't let him ruin your future." She wanted to believe him, but the memory of Howard's chilling gaze lingered. Dylan might be brilliant and brave, but Howard Avery wielded power like a weapon, and lines in the sand had just been drawn, lines that could not be easily erased. Over the next few days, Olivia's worst fears began to materialize. A routine phone interview at another clinic ended abruptly when the hiring manager recognized the Avery Foundation's connection to St. Jerome's. She didn't say it outright, but Olivia sensed hesitation the moment her volunteer background was mentioned. Something was tarnishing her credibility, just as Howard had threatened. At St. Jerome's, her volunteer hours continued, but she felt an icy reception from certain administrators. Subtle changes cropped up. Her assigned tasks were fewer, her access to departmental areas suddenly restricted. Even Grace, who'd been supportive, admitted with a regretful sigh that the HR office had lost Olivia's paperwork in the chaos. "It's all on hold again," Grace whispered, eyes apologetic. Trying not to crumble, Olivia poured her energy into the patients. One morning, she sat in the waiting area with an elderly woman who was too scared to be alone. Olivia held her hand, speaking softly, until a nurse finally called the woman's name. Moments like that reminded her why she was here, to help, even if she wasn't officially on the payroll. Dylan, meanwhile, was fighting battles on multiple fronts. She watched him from a distance, orchestrating surgeries by day, sifting through legal documents by night. He rarely smiled, tension radiating from him like an aura. When they managed brief, stolen conversations, he seemed haunted by guilt. "I hate that you're suffering because of me," he'd say, and she'd answer, "I'm suffering with you, not because of you." But the pressure was taking its toll. One evening, she found him slumped in a corridor outside the ICU, massaging his temples. She knelt beside him. "Dylan, when was the last time you slept properly?" she asked, voice soft. He shook his head. "I can't remember. I keep poring over financial statements, hoping to find a smoking gun. My father's grown more secretive, though." She took his hand in hers. "You can't do this alone." His eyes flicked to hers. "I don't have a choice. If I don't uncover the truth, he keeps the power. And you—" He stopped, swallowing hard. "And you'll be forced out." She pressed his hand gently. "Then let's figure it out together." 2 nights later, Dylan called her, voice crackling through the phone with pent-up frustration. "I found something." A series of fund transfers disguised as research grants. They all link back to a front company run by one of my father's oldest associates. Olivia's heart thudded. "That's huge. Can you prove it's fraudulent?" "Almost. I need one more piece of documentation, a letter from the board authorizing the transfer. If I can show that letter was never approved by the full board, it proves my father was funneling money. I have a source who claims it's in a locked archive at the Foundation's headquarters. A chill slid down her spine. How do you get in? He was silent for a beat. The building's locked down after hours, but I have a key card from when I used to help with philanthropic events. If it still works, I could slip in, find the file, and get out. Her breathing grew shallow. That sounds risky. If you're caught, I know, he said, voice grim. But it may be the only way to force the board's hand. If the Foundation is proven corrupt, they'll remove my father. We can unfreeze budgets, save jobs, yours included. She closed her eyes, torn between fear and determination. Dylan, be careful. Your father won't forgive this. His voice wavered. I'm doing it for the hospital, for my integrity, and for you. Olivia slept little that night, her dreams plagued by visions of Dylan caught in the act, security alarms blaring. When morning came, she hurried to the hospital, uneasy. She sought out Marianne, confiding in her about the swirling rumors of sabotage and missing paperwork. Marianne's jaw set angrily. I'd heard that Howard Avery was playing dirty, but blacklisting you is next-level terrible. If you need me to speak to anyone, I will. Thank you, Olivia whispered. Right now, I'm just trying to hold on. Marianne squeezed her arm. Don't let him break you. Leaving Marianne's support lifted her spirits a notch, but the sense of looming disaster only grew as the day wore on. By mid-afternoon, she glimpsed Howard Avery striding through the corridors. His usual entourage of lawyers trailed behind, faces grim. She stepped aside, hoping not to be noticed, but his glance caught her anyway, a steely flash of triumph in his eyes, as if daring her to defy him again. That evening, Dylan texted, "Going to Foundation HQ tonight. I'll let you know what happens." She stared at the message, heart pounding. What if it's a trap? Howard might anticipate Dylan's move. Yet telling him don't go would only undermine his resolve. With trembling fingers, she sent back, "Please be careful. Or call me the moment you can." Hours stretched into an anxious vigil. She paced her apartment, phone in hand, imagining the labyrinth of locked offices, the hush of after-hours security. Around midnight, still no word. She tried to distract herself by tidying up, but every minute felt like an hour. By 1 in the morning, panic was setting in. She typed a text, "Are you safe?" and stared at the screen, waiting for any sign of activity. Finally, her phone buzzed. Relief coursed through her veins until she opened Dylan's message. "Got it, but security saw me. Didn't get caught. Yet. Don't call." Her hands shook. Not caught yet. That meant he was on the run, or at least hiding out. She sank onto her couch, the weight of dread pressing her down. Whatever proof he'd taken would be explosive. Howard Avery, with all his resources, wouldn't let it slide. Clutching the phone against her chest, she prayed Dylan would make it through the night without harm. Everything hung in the balance: her job, Dylan's future, the hospital's funding, and their fragile, growing love. One misstep now could send them both spiraling into ruin. The sun rose over a weary New York City, painting the horizon in muted oranges and grays. Olivia sat at her small kitchen table, phone lying silent. She'd barely slept, waiting for Dylan to contact her again. Outside, the usual morning bustle began, cars honking, neighbors heading to work, oblivious to the high-stakes drama playing out in the Avery empire. At last, her phone buzzed with an incoming call. She snatched it up. "Dylan?" His voice sounded ragged but relieved. "I'm okay. I spent the night in a hotel, away from my place." Security nearly cornered me as I left the Foundation's office, but I managed to slip out. I have the documents. She released a shaky breath. Thank God you're safe. Listen, he continued. I'm heading straight to an investigative journalist I trust. The documents show unauthorized transfers, basically blatant corruption. Once this goes public, my father's position is indefensible. Olivia's heart pounded. Are you sure you want to go public so soon? He hesitated. I have to. The board meets tomorrow. If I blow the whistle today, they can't ignore it. My father will be exposed. She wasn't sure whether to feel triumph or terror. What can I do? Stay low. If Howard discovers I have evidence, he'll come after anyone close to me. His tone turned grave. That includes you. She swallowed. I understand. Just promise you'll let me know once you've spoken to the journalist. I will, he said softly, then paused. Olivia, we're almost there. Hang in a little longer. The call ended, leaving her thoughts swirling. She kept replaying, we're almost there, a fragile hope. Yet danger lurked. Howard Avery wouldn't surrender without a fight. At the hospital, she carried out her volunteer duties with shaky determination. She avoided areas where Howard or his legal team might appear, sticking to the pediatric ward. Yet by midday, word of a looming scandal began trickling through the staff. A rumor circulated that Dylan Avery had leaked documents to the press, though no official statement had been made. Marianne cornered Olivia in a supply closet. Is it true? Did Dr. Avery really find proof of corruption? Olivia pressed a box of bandages to her chest. I can't talk about it. Fear of revealing too much gripped her. Just be prepared. Things might get messy. Marianne gave her a look of concern but didn't press further. By late afternoon, a commotion erupted in the main lobby. A cluster of reporters had gathered outside, cameras flashing as they tried to gain entry. Security guards blocked them, but one journalist managed to shout, "Is it true Dr. Avery is whistleblowing against his own father?" Another bellowed, "What does this mean for the hospital's funding?" Olivia stood by a corner, pulse hammering. Dylan hadn't called yet, but it seemed the press had some inkling of the story. She needed to see if he was safe. She fished out her phone and tapped a text. "Are you okay? News crews are here." No reply. She stayed past her volunteer shift, nerves frayed. As evening approached, she snuck up to the 5th floor, where Dylan's office was located. The hallway was eerily quiet. His office door stood ajar, lights off. With a sinking feeling, she peeked inside. Empty, untouched. "Looking for someone," a cold voice said from behind. She spun around to face Howard Avery, standing in the dim corridor with arms folded. A flicker of a smirk played across his lips. "My son isn't here." Olivia's heart thudded. I was just... "Don't bother lying," Howard interjected. "I know he's fed information to the media. They'll run the story soon. My lawyers are scrambling to contain the damage." She mustered courage to ask, "Then why are you here? Shouldn't you be?" "Containing the damage." His eyes flickered with fury. "I'm tying up loose ends. You're quite the loose end, Miss Bailey." He stepped closer, voice low. "All this trouble to keep you out of Dylan's life, yet you persist. So be it. I'll make this simple. Pack your things, leave this hospital for good, or you'll regret the day you crossed me." Her pulse raced, but she refused to step back. "I'm not afraid of you." "Liar," he hissed, face twisting. "You're terrified, and rightly so. Do you think Dylan can protect you? He can't even protect himself now." In that moment, her anger flared, overriding caution. "He's doing what's right, and you can't stand it. Whatever you threaten, I'm not running away." Howard's mouth tightened. A long silence stretched, the tension thick. Finally, he spat, "You foolish girl. When everything collapses around him, don't expect him to pick up your pieces." With that, he brushed past her, footsteps echoing down the hallway. Olivia staggered into Dylan's dark office, heart pounding. She fumbled for the chair, collapsing into it. Tears burned her eyes. Howard's words stung because they carried a kernel of fear she couldn't shake. What if Dylan's world truly collapses? Would there be room for her in the aftermath? She dialed Dylan's number, straight to voicemail. "Where are you?" she wondered frantically. "Did you manage to give the documents to the journalist? Are you safe?" Outside, the sky deepened into dusk, the hospital lights flickering on. Olivia realized she was trembling, adrenaline coursing through her veins. She'd never felt so powerless, caught between a corrupt empire's wrath and the man who dared challenge it. A single text pinged her phone. "Just finished. Story breaks tonight. I'll find you soon." Relief and dread fused in her chest. Tonight, everything changes. That night, Olivia raced home, eyes glued to the shifting headlines on her phone's news apps. Shortly after 9, a major local outlet published a bombshell article. Avery Foundation under fire. Internal documents reveal unauthorized transfers. The piece cited anonymous sources within the foundation and detailed suspicious financial pathways pointing directly to Howard Avery. Her phone lit up with a text from Dylan. The journalist ran it. "I'm safe, at least for now. We should meet." She immediately replied, heart pounding. Minutes later, he called. "Liv," he breathed, sounding both exhilarated and exhausted. "It's out. The board can't ignore it now." She pressed her free hand against her temple, trying to calm her nerves. "Where are you?" "A hotel near the river. I don't think going home is wise. My father knows I'm behind the leak. Can you come?" Despite her own terror, she didn't hesitate. "Text me the address. I'll be there." 30 minutes later, Olivia arrived at a modest hotel overlooking the East River. She spotted Dylan in the lobby, dressed in casual clothes that seemed hastily thrown on. Tension radiated from him, but relief swept across his face when he saw her. They rode the elevator in silence, stepping out onto a quiet hallway. Inside his small room, half-packed files and an open laptop littered the bed. She surveyed the scene, swallowing the lump in her throat. "Where will you go after this?" He shrugged. "Not sure yet. The board is meeting first thing tomorrow. They'll want my statement. Howard might show up breathing fire." She crossed to him, taking his hands. "Are you okay?" A soft laugh escaped him, tinged with disbelief. "I'm about to blow up my father's legacy and my own place within it, but I'm doing what's right." Her chest tightened with pride and concern. "And what about us?" "Howard won't back down easily. Even if the board removes him, he'll find ways to lash out." Dylan's grip on her hands tightened. "I don't know how this ends, but I do know I don't want to lose you." His voice trembled. "I meant it when I said you mattered to me." Tears pricked her eyes. "You matter to me too." He pulled her close, arms enveloping her. The tension of the past week seemed to unravel in that embrace, replaced by a surge of raw emotion, fear, defiance, longing, and a fierce devotion that neither had fully admitted until now. Their lips met in a desperate kiss, as if acknowledging this might be the last fragile moment of peace before the world came crashing down. They sank onto the edge of the bed, clinging to each other. When they finally broke apart, he rested his forehead against hers. "I wish things could be simple," she gave a tearful smile. "We'll find our own version of simple once this is over." He inhaled shakily, glancing at the laptop. "I need to forward some additional files to the reporter. It's evidence of how the foundation's money was supposed to fund the outpatient program, the job you were supposed to have. Howard diverted those funds. I can't let him hide that." Her pulse quickened. "So he directly took from the position that would have been mine?" From multiple positions, Dylan said bitterly. The entire outpatient expansion is underfunded because of his shell games. It's sickening. He used patients' care as leverage in backroom deals. Rage churned in Olivia's chest. Any doubt she'd harbored about Dylan's stance evaporated. "We'll expose everything," she said, surprising herself with the vehemence in her voice. Dylan nodded, eyes full of gratitude. "I'll email these documents now. Then tomorrow, I face the board." The night passed fitfully. They dozed in short spurts, jolting awake at every ping of a phone notification. Around 4 in the morning, Dylan's phone rang. He grabbed it, tension snapping through him. "Hello?" He put the call on speaker. Howard Avery's voice crackled over the line, low and furious. "I hope you're pleased with yourself, Dylan. The entire city is talking about these allegations. Donors are withdrawing. The board is in panic." Dylan closed his eyes, mustering courage. "Dad, you did this. I'm just revealing it." A derisive laugh echoed. "You're my son. That name is everything you have. Without it, you're just another surgeon. Remember that when you're jobless and the hospital is bankrupt?" The line went dead. Dylan stared at the phone, hands shaking. Olivia placed a comforting hand on his arm. "He's lashing out." He turned to her, voice hollow. "I know, but it stings. Everything I believed about family loyalty is in pieces." She sighed, pulling him close again. "We have each other." "That's enough for now." Morning light crept through the window blinds. They prepared as best they could for the board meeting, sipping black coffee in tense silence. Dylan dressed in a press shirt and tie, face set with grim determination. Olivia watched him with a swell of admiration and heartbreak. After a quick hug in the hotel lobby, they parted ways, Dylan to face the board, Olivia to observe from a safe distance. She'd planned to head to St. Jerome's to volunteer, but she wasn't sure if she'd be welcomed. Instead, she decided to wait in a nearby cafe, phone in hand, ready for updates. Each minute felt like an hour, her mind conjuring images of board members shouting, lawyers threatening, Howard's rage filling the room. Yet she also envisioned Dylan standing firm, refusing to buckle. "He's stronger than he knows," she told herself, praying it would be enough. When her phone finally buzzed, she nearly dropped it. Dylan's text read, "Meeting is done. We need to talk, ASAP." Hands trembling, she hurried out of the cafe, the city spinning around her. Whatever just happened in that boardroom, she thought, it's going to change our lives forever. Dylan stepped outside the boardroom, the echo of raised voices and desperate bargaining still ringing in his ears. He'd expected turbulence, but the actual scene was worse than he'd imagined. Half the board members looked betrayed, the other half looked fearful, and Howard Avery had stared him down with an expression that promised retribution. He spotted Olivia at the far end of the corridor, standing near a window overlooking the city. The sunlight caught in her hair, revealing the raw tension on her face. The moment he locked eyes with her, something in him softened. He raised a hand in greeting, silently beckoning her closer. She hurried over, anxiety rippling across her features. "What happened in there?" Dylan let out a ragged breath. "They confronted my father with the evidence. He tried to dismiss it as a misunderstanding, but the documents are solid. The board demanded he step aside until a full investigation concludes." A flicker of relief brightened her eyes. "That's huge." He nodded, though his shoulders remained tense. "It is, but it doesn't mean everything is fixed. The foundation's accounts are still in question. The hospital's expansions are all on hold until they figure out how much money was misallocated." Olivia reached for his hand. "Does that mean your father is out?" Dylan glanced over his shoulder at the closed boardroom door. "Temporarily, yes. He's furious. And if I know him, he's already planning a counterattack." But for now, he can't call the shots. She squeezed his hand. That's a victory, Dylan. You did the right thing. He exhaled, voice unsteady. I know, but the aftermath is going to be brutal. This place is under a microscope. Staff might lose their jobs if the board decides to cut costs to rebuild trust. A stab of worry pierced her. And me, my position. Dylan lifted his gaze, resolve returning. I'm going to fight for you as soon as they appoint an interim foundation lead, but we may be facing a tough climb. Just then, the boardroom door swung open. Several members filed out, avoiding Dylan's gaze. Lastly, Howard Avery emerged, accompanied by two lawyers. His eyes locked onto Dylan, then flicked dismissively toward Olivia. Without a word, he strode off, his footsteps echoing down the hall. A tension so thick it felt physical lingered in his wake. After a beat, Dylan turned back to Olivia. Let's get out of here for a minute, find some fresh air. They walked in silence to a small courtyard behind the hospital. The sky was bright, and the hum of distant traffic mixed with the rush of wind through the sparse autumn leaves. Olivia noticed Dylan's hand trembling slightly. She placed a reassuring palm over his. You're shaking. He let out a humorless laugh. I just tanked my father's reputation. I always knew I'd have to stand up to him eventually, but I never pictured it would go this far. You're protecting the patients and staff he used as pawns, she reminded him, voice gentle, including me. Dylan's eyes met hers, gratitude flickering beneath layers of exhaustion. You were the reason I finally pushed past my hesitation. I couldn't let him bully or ruin you. He paused, then whispered, but now I'm standing at a crossroads. I have to decide whether to stay and rebuild the foundation, knowing the Avery name might be forever tainted, or walk away from it all. Olivia's heart twisted. She'd never seen him look so vulnerable. Do you want to leave the foundation? He raked a hand through his hair. I love medicine. I love helping people. But the politics, the backroom deals, if I stay, I become the face of an organization my father nearly destroyed. Can I fix it? Or will it destroy me, too? Her grip tightened. You're strong enough to rebuild it if that's what you want. You've shown you won't compromise on ethics. People will respect that. He swallowed hard. I hope you're right. They stood there, the wind shifting around them, each lost in thought. At length, Olivia spoke, her voice steady despite the swirl of emotion inside her. Whatever you choose, I'll be by your side if you'll have me. Relief and longing mingled on his face. He pulled her into a hug, resting his chin on her shoulder. For a moment, the chaos melted away, and it was just them, two people who'd found each other in the midst of a storm. Then a sudden beep from Dylan's pager shattered the quiet. He drew back, checking the tiny screen. ER consult, he muttered. I'm needed for an emergency surgery. Olivia nodded, forcing a small smile. Go save a life. We'll figure the rest out. He leaned in, pressing a swift kiss to her forehead. Then he dashed inside, leaving Olivia beneath the shifting autumn sky. She stared after him, heart pounding with a complicated blend of hope and trepidation. A single question echoed in her mind. Where do we go from here? Standing alone in that courtyard, she realized the true meaning of crossroads. Everything was up in the air, her future at the hospital, Dylan's role in the foundation, and the fragile bond they'd built. Yet despite the unknown, she felt oddly calm. The first real step had been taken. Howard Avery no longer held unchallenged power. The next steps would be difficult, but she sensed the promise of something genuine, a life shaped by integrity rather than fear. And that, she thought, was a reason to keep pushing forward. The following days passed in a whirlwind of investigations and reorganizations. The hospital board named an interim foundation director, a grey-haired woman named Clara Wicks, known for her meticulous ethics and cool demeanor. Her first move was to freeze all outgoing funds until the paper trail could be untangled. Departments scrambled to adjust, uncertain which programs would remain funded. Amid this upheaval, Olivia continued volunteering, though she sensed that some of the senior staff viewed her with a mixture of sympathy and apprehension. Her connection to Dylan wasn't exactly a secret, and while a few colleagues, like Mary Ann and Grace, offered kind words, others clearly worried that her presence might invite more conflict with the Avery family. One afternoon, Olivia was updating patient files when Clara Wicks appeared in the doorway of the admin office. The older woman wore a crisp navy suit and held a stack of documents under one arm. Her steel-grey hair was neatly pinned back, and her expression gave little away. "Miss Bailey?" Clara asked, voice polite yet clipped. Olivia stood. "Yes, ma'am." Clara glanced down at her folder. "I understand you initially applied for an administrative assistant position here before the hiring freeze." A jolt of surprise ran through Olivia. "That's right." Clara studied her with discerning eyes. "According to Dr. Avery's notes, you showed promise. I also see your volunteer logs. Your attendance is impeccable." Olivia's heart thumped. "I love this place, Ms. Wicks. I want to be part of helping it grow." Clara nodded once. "I'm organizing a thorough review of staff needs. There's a possibility of reinstating essential hires if the funds are confirmed legitimate. If you're still interested, I'd like to schedule a formal interview." A surge of hope bloomed in Olivia's chest. "Yes, of course I'm still interested. Thank you." Without a smile, Clara handed her a business card. "Call my office to arrange a time. I'm not guaranteeing anything, but I believe in fairness. If you're qualified and the budget allows, you deserve the chance you were promised." Olivia took the card with a grateful nod. "I appreciate it." "Really?" Clara dipped her head in acknowledgement and left. As soon as the doorway was clear, Olivia exhaled shakily. This was the first glimmer of light since Howard's meltdown. She texted Dylan the news, fingers trembling. "Clara Wicks wants to interview me for the job. Could happen soon." He replied within minutes. "That's amazing. I'm so happy for you. Let's talk tonight." That evening, Dylan arrived at Olivia's apartment carrying takeout bags from a nearby Thai restaurant. She greeted him with an eager grin, beckoning him inside. The cramped living room felt cozier than ever as they unpacked the containers. He didn't waste time. "Tell me everything about Clara's offer." Olivia filled him in between bites of spicy noodles, describing Clara's no-nonsense demeanor. Dylan's expression lit with cautious optimism. "Clara is strict but fair. If she says there's a chance, she means it." Olivia set down her fork, hunger forgotten. "But what about Howard? If he still has influence, could he block this?" Dylan's jaw tensed. "He's on suspension from the board. Clara outranks him now in foundation decisions. Legally, he can't sabotage your hire unless he engineers some new crisis." She sighed, fiddling with her napkin. "I just want to do a normal day's work without being in the middle of a war." He reached across the table, gently clasping her hand. "We're close, Liv. The scandal's public, Howard's out of direct power, and the board is cleaning house. I know it's been a nightmare, but you stood your ground, and now there's real hope." His warm gaze met hers, and she felt a rush of emotion, relief, gratitude, longing. "I don't think I could have held on without you," she whispered. He squeezed her hand. "Same here." They ate in comfortable silence for a moment, the only sound the rustle of plastic takeout bags and distant traffic through the apartment window. Then Olivia mustered courage to ask the question nagging her. "Dylan, have you decided what you'll do about the foundation? Stay and rebuild or walk away?" A flicker of uncertainty crossed his face. "Clara asked me to consider an official advisory role. I'd still be a surgeon first, but I'd oversee philanthropic programs to ensure they stay transparent." "That sounds promising," Olivia ventured. You'd have the power to keep things honest. He nodded slowly. Exactly. But it also means dealing with the Avery name every day, constantly fighting the shadow my father cast. I'm worried it'll consume me. She shifted closer, folding his hand between both of hers. You're not your father. That's the point. People need someone who cares about patients more than power. If that's you, then maybe it's worth it. His eyes glimmered with vulnerability. Thank you for believing in me. She touched his cheek, a soft smile curving her lips. Always. They tidied up the leftovers, and Dylan prepared to leave, pausing at the door. I'll do it, he finally said, voice steady. I'll advise for the foundation under Clara's direction. If it becomes toxic, I'll step back. But I owe it to the hospital to try. Olivia nodded. I'm proud of you. He leaned in, kissing her gently. And I'm proud of you, future St. Jerome's admin assistant. Her cheeks warmed with a mixture of happiness and fear. Let's hope the interview goes well. He gave a final grin before stepping into the hallway. Once he was gone, Olivia leaned against the closed door, letting out a slow, contented breath. The foundation scandal wasn't magically resolved, but for the first time, the path ahead seemed navigable. They'd reached a turning point, a chance to build something better amid the rubble. 2 days later, Olivia sat before Clara Wicks and an HR representative in a small conference room at St. Jerome's. The atmosphere was refreshingly professional. No hidden agendas, no scowls of disapproval. Clara asked direct questions about Olivia's administrative skills, her experiences volunteering, and her vision for patient support services. Olivia, heart-pounding, answered with earnest detail. She highlighted her compassion for patients, her organizational strengths, and her willingness to learn on the job. Though her nerves crackled beneath the surface, she held steady, determined to show she was more than a footnote in the Avery family drama. After nearly 30 minutes, Clara closed her folder. Thank you, Miss Bailey. We'll be in touch shortly. Olivia exhaled, offered a polite smile, and left, adrenaline surging through her. She found Dylan in the hallway, leaning against a vending machine. He looked up and question in his eyes. She mouthed, I think it went well. He flashed a thumbs up and mouthed back, proud of you. Later that afternoon, word spread that Clara Wicks had called an urgent meeting in the main auditorium. Foundation staff, board members, and senior hospital administrators were all summoned. Olivia had never seen so many professionals corralled in one place. She managed to slip in among the crowd, hoping to catch Dylan's eye. He was seated near the front, scanning the room for her. Clara took the stage, flanked by 2 men in suits. She spoke into the microphone, her voice reverberating through the large space. In light of recent findings, the Avery Foundation must restructure its governance to restore public trust. Effective immediately. I will serve as acting president with Dr. Dylan Avery as our lead medical advisor. A ripple of murmurs swept the room. Dylan sat up straighter, surprise mingling with resolve in his expression. Clara continued, We're committed to transparency. An external audit will review all grants, including those that were diverted from our outpatient expansion. We'll address each shortfall, beginning with staff roles placed on hold. Excitement fluttered in Olivia's stomach. This is it. Maybe her role would be reinstated quickly, but Clara wasn't finished. However, the Foundation's resources aren't limitless. We must prioritize which areas to revive first. Some programs and positions may not survive immediate cuts. It pains me to say this, but we'll do our utmost to minimize impact on patient care. The room fell into tense silence. Olivia's shoulders tightened, a prickle of dread crawling along her skin. Dylan turned slightly, his gaze finding hers in the crowd. She read the worry in his eyes, echoing her own uncertainty. After the meeting, clusters of employees lingered, discussing the partial victory and looming changes. Olivia wove through the throng, trying to reach Dylan. Before she could, a familiar voice snarled behind her. "You think you've won?" She turned to see Howard Avery, standing stiff with rage. His once perfectly coiffed hair looked slightly disheveled, and the circles beneath his eyes suggested sleepless nights. Yet his posture was as haughty as ever. Olivia inhaled sharply. "I'm not trying to win anything, Mr. Avery. Your son's working to save this hospital." Howard's lip curled. "Save it from whom?" "Me. I built this institution's wings, funded entire departments. If not for me, St. Jerome's wouldn't be half its size." She squared her shoulders, heartbeat thudding. "And now that corruption's been exposed, the hospital can continue without the shadows you cast." His eyes flashed with malice. "Dylan's loyalty to you will be his downfall. He's a fool to trust you, just as he was a fool to trust the board." Anger flared hot in her chest. "He trusts honesty and compassion. That's why people respect him," Howard sneered, then leaned forward, voice dripping with contempt. "Mark my words, Miss Bailey, you'll never fit into this world. Even if Dylan stands by you, the Avery name will chew you up and spit you out." Before she could reply, Dylan appeared at her side, glowering at his father. "Leave her alone." Howard pivoted, letting out a laugh devoid of warmth. "Protecting your volunteer again? How noble!" Dylan's jaw tightened. "She's not just a volunteer. She's going to be part of this hospital, and there's nothing you can do to stop it." A tense moment ensued, father and son locked in a battle of wills. Finally, Howard shook his head in disgust, pivoting on his heel. "I'll see you at the audit hearings," he hissed. Then he stalked off, legal aids in tow. Olivia let out a shaky breath, feeling the weight of Howard's words like a physical blow. Dylan gently turned her to face him. "Don't listen to his threats. He's losing grip, and he knows it." She nodded, though her heart still pounded. "He seemed so sure I won't belong." Dylan's gaze softened. "He underestimates you, and he underestimates us." They walked to a quieter alcove near the auditorium. Dylan leaned against the wall, shoulders slumping. "I hate this tension, but Clara's announcement is progress. Now we just need to see which positions they'll restore. It might take a few days, maybe weeks." A flicker of worry crossed Olivia's face. "What if they decide my role isn't a priority?" He brushed a thumb across her cheek. "Then I'll push for it anyway. The outpatient expansion is essential, and you're essential." Warmth fluttered in her chest. "Thank you for believing that." He slid his hand down to hers, fingers interlocking. "We'll fight as long as it takes." She squeezed his hand, nodding with determination. Yet as they stood in the hospital corridor, surrounded by the distant hum of anxious staff, she couldn't shake the feeling that deeper cracks still threatened everything they were working toward. Consequences loomed, financial shortfalls, looming legal battles, and Howard's simmering vendetta. For now, though, they had each other, and that spark, small but bright, felt like the only light in the storm. 3 weeks later, life at St. Jerome's was inching toward a new normal. Clara Wicks and the auditing team worked overtime, sifting through decades of records, unearthing shady dealings. Staff morale had been shaky, but the promise of honest leadership kept most people hanging on, hoping for genuine change. For Olivia, every day blended determination with anticipation. She'd completed a second interview with Clara, this time a more detailed discussion about her administrative tasks and future responsibilities. The day after, she'd received an informal email hinting that an offer was imminent, pending final budget confirmations. She nearly cried when she read it, yet she also missed the light-hearted moments she and Dylan once shared, moments stolen by the crisis. He was juggling surgeries, advising Clara on medical priorities, and fielding questions from worried staff. But one afternoon, she found a short note taped to the volunteer desk. "Meet me at the old supply closet, 3rd floor, 5 p.m. D." She blinked at it, feeling a spark of excitement. That supply closet had become a favorite secret nook during her volunteer shifts, usually to share a quick laugh or stolen kiss in the midst of chaos. At exactly 5, she slipped away, heart fluttering. He was waiting, leaning against the shelves stacked with linens and spare equipment. The moment she stepped inside, he closed the door and grinned. "Hey, stranger." She laughed softly, noticing the playfulness in his eyes. "Hey." He drew her into a gentle hug, sighing into her hair. "I missed you. Everything's been so heavy lately. I wanted to carve out a moment for just us, like we used to." Her heart swelled. "Me too. It feels like ages since we've had 5 minutes without emergency alarms or a board meeting." They spent a few precious minutes catching up. Dylan recounted a patient who'd told corny jokes post-op, making the entire recovery unit crack up. Olivia shared a sweet interaction with an elderly couple who'd recognized her from the volunteer desk and insisted on treating her like family. Eventually, Dylan's expression grew more serious. "I have news. The board's finalizing which outpatient roles to restore. Your position is at the top of the list." Her eyes widened. "Really? Are you sure?" He nodded. "Clara confirmed it. They'll officially offer you the job once the next wave of funding is unlocked, likely within the week." She clapped a hand over her mouth, overwhelmed. "Oh my God, Dylan, that's incredible." Tears prickled at her eyes. "I've been waiting for this for so long." He gently brushed away the tears threatening to fall. "I know you have, and you deserve it. This hospital needs you." She laughed, wiping her cheeks. "You say that like I'm essential to the building's foundation," he smirked. "Kind of are. At least, you're essential to my foundation." Heat flooded her cheeks at the sincerity in his voice. She opened her mouth to respond, but footsteps echoed in the hallway outside. They froze, exchanging conspiratorial looks as the footsteps faded. Then Dylan let out a quiet chuckle. "We should get back to work before someone locks us in here." Olivia grinned. "Wouldn't be the worst fate? But yeah, let's go." By late evening, the hospital had quieted. Olivia finished her volunteer shift, double-checking that the supply stations were stocked. She was heading toward the elevators when Dylan caught up to her. "Coffee? My treat?" he asked, an affectionate lift in his tone. She wrinkled her nose playfully. "I should say no. It's so late, but I can never resist coffee with you." They ended up at a 24-hour diner across the street, a cozy place with neon lights flickering in the window. Sliding into a vinyl booth, they ordered 2 black coffees and a slice of pie to share. The waitress, a woman with a motherly vibe, recognized Dylan from his hospital scrubs and teased him about working non-stop. Over pie and steaming mugs, they talked about everything but the scandal, revisiting fun topics like favorite old TV shows, comedic mishaps from Olivia's previous jobs, and what they'd do if they ever took a vacation. Laughter bubbled between them, a reminder that beneath the tension, they were just 2 people falling in love. At one point, Olivia asked, "Dylan, if you could go anywhere, free from obligations, where would you go?" He paused, staring into his coffee. "I'd probably rent a cabin by a lake, somewhere quiet, maybe up in Vermont. No schedules, no phone calls, just nature." Then he smiled wryly. "Would you come with me?" She snorted softly, poking the remaining pie crumbs with her fork. "Give me a chance to settle into my new job first. Then we'll talk cabin retreats." They shared a grin. For a moment, the future looked bright. No overshadowing father figure, no precarious budgets, just the promise of ordinary joys. When they finally parted ways outside the diner, the neon sign reflecting off the wet pavement, Dylan walked her to the bus stop, tucking a stray strand of hair behind her ear. In that simple gesture, Olivia felt the weight of everything they'd overcome, and everything still ahead. Her phone buzzed with a text from Leah, checking in, but she ignored it for the moment, focusing on Dylan's presence. Even in the humdrum swirl of city lights, she felt an undercurrent of contentment. Yet as she boarded the bus, a small voice whispered that Howard Avery hadn't disappeared. He lurked in the background, possibly plotting, and the Foundation's finances were still fragile. But for now, she clung to this respite of laughter and pie, a brief return to fun and games that reminded her why, despite all the hardships, she and Dylan kept fighting for St. Jerome's and for each other. A week passed, and Olivia arrived at St. Jerome's with her heart pounding in excitement. Today, she wouldn't be signing in at the volunteer desk. She'd be heading to HR to finalize the paperwork for her new role as an administrative assistant in the outpatient department. The approval had come through the night before, a brief, formal email that felt like a golden ticket. She rode the elevator to the top floor, stepping out into a corridor she'd mostly avoided in the past, where the hospital's executive offices resided. Her shoulders stiffened at the memory of tense run-ins with Howard Avery, but he no longer roamed these halls as a figure of unchecked power. Grace, the volunteer coordinator, had insisted on accompanying her. They met outside the HR office, and Grace gave her a big hug. "You did it, Olivia. Stuck it out, believed in yourself, and here you are." Emotion welled in Olivia's throat. "Couldn't have made it without you. Thank you for everything." Inside, the HR rep was all smiles, handing Olivia a stack of forms. She signed page after page, hardly believing this was real. It wasn't glamorous, an entry-level position with a modest salary, but it was a legitimate foot in the door and came with benefits she desperately needed. She took the official folder, her new hospital ID, and clutched them against her chest as if they might vanish. Walking out into the hallway, she found Dylan leaning casually against the wall. He wore his usual scrubs and a grin that lit up his tired features. "Admin Assistant Bailey," he teased. "How does it feel?" She shook her head in wonder. "Better than I ever imagined." He held out a hand, and she took it, letting him lead her to a quiet corner near a row of windows. The city skyline stretched beyond the glass, and somewhere down there, the traffic and chaos continued. But up here, it felt like a new chapter. "Clara is announcing your hire formally in the staff bulletin today," Dylan said. "She might ask you to say a few words at a department meeting." Olivia's eyes widened. "Public speaking? That's terrifying." He chuckled. "You faced down Howard Avery and refused a bribe. You can handle a few co-workers." She rolled her eyes playfully. "Fair point." Their moment was interrupted by the ping of Dylan's pager. He checked it, sighing. "I have to consult on a complicated case. Young patient with a congenital issue. Could be a long surgery." Olivia nodded, sobering. "Go. That's what you're here for." He placed a gentle hand on her cheek. "After my shift, maybe we celebrate. If you're not too tired." She smiled, warmth blooming in her chest. "Deal." The day flew by in a blur of new tasks. Olivia discovered her desk in the outpatient wing, a simple, functional space with a computer, a phone, and a view of a busy hallway. She spent hours meeting staff, familiarizing herself with scheduling software, and juggling phone calls for upcoming patient appointments. It was exhilarating and daunting at once. Around mid-afternoon, she paused to sip water from a paper cup, letting the reality settle. She was officially employed, no longer living on the edge of uncertainty. Her phone buzzed, another text from Leah. "Congrats on the new job, sis. So proud. When do we celebrate?" Olivia sent back a quick grin emoji, promising a sisterly dinner soon. A gentle knock on the desk made her look up. Mary Ann, the nurse from radiology, smiled warmly. "You're back, but this time as a co-worker." Olivia beamed. "Feels surreal." Mary Ann patted her shoulder. "We're lucky to have you. Welcome aboard. For real." By early evening, Olivia had settled into a rhythm, finalizing appointment schedules for the next day. The overhead lights cast a warm glow on the corridor. She stretched, feeling both tired and thrilled. This was where she belonged. Suddenly, a text from Dylan appeared. "Done with surgery. In the courtyard if you want to see me before you leave." Her heart fluttered. She quickly tidied her desk and logged off the computer. The courtyard behind the hospital was nearly empty at this hour, the sky painted with streaks of orange and pink as the sun dipped low. She spotted Dylan near a small bench, stethoscope draped around his neck. He turned when he heard her footsteps, relief and pride radiating from his expression. "Long day?" he asked softly. She nodded, stepping closer. "And a good one." He slipped an arm around her waist, pulling her in. They stood there, side by side, the hush of early evening settling over them. For a moment, neither spoke. She listened to the distant hum of traffic, the whisper of a breeze through newly trimmed hedges. The hospital rose behind them, windows reflecting the sunset's glow. "I want you to know," Dylan finally said, voice low, "no matter what happens with the foundation, or my father, or the board, I'm here. We'll figure it out together." She leaned her head on his shoulder. "I know, and I'm not going anywhere. This is my place now." They lapsed into a comfortable silence, letting the final rays of the sun bathe them in warm light. In that silent moment, the trials of the past weeks, Howard's threats, the financial scandal, the uncertain job faded into the background. All that mattered was this shared conviction. They'd found each other in the darkest moments, and they were stepping forward, hand in hand, toward a future they would shape themselves. Olivia closed her eyes, allowing a rush of gratitude to fill her. She pictured her first accidental step into the operating room, Dylan's cool grey eyes meeting hers, the strange spark that set everything in motion. She'd never have predicted it would lead here, standing in the courtyard of St. Jerome's, employed in love and filled with hope. He pressed a soft kiss to her temple. The air felt charged with promise, a sense that life could be both ordinary and extraordinary at once. Tomorrow they would face more challenges, bureaucracy, lingering resentment, perhaps even Howard's continued schemes. But tonight, under the glowing sky, they simply stood in quiet solidarity, forging a bond stronger than any intimidation or scandal could break. I hope you enjoyed today's story. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss more stories like this. Leave a like and comment below what you thought of the story. See you in the next video.